Welcome to the fourth Teaching Personal Finance Conference, which we are holding online this year. While we cannot have you on the Stanford campus, we are excited to have so many participants joining us from many places. The conference is also live streamed, and I want to welcome all of you who are following the conference on YouTube. The aim of this conference is to learn from each other. We will share our experiences, talk about teaching strategies, and resources that have resonated with our students. To get things started, please go to the chat and let us know about you, your institution, whether you teach personal finance, and how many students you had last year in total throughout the year. And it is my pleasure to turn now to Professor Michael Boskin and John Chauvin for some introductory remarks. They started teaching Introduction to Financial Decision Making, or Econ 43, here at Stanford in 2020. The course was immediately popular among students, and interest has only grown over time. John?
Well, I want to add my welcome, and just to start where she left off, I'd say the planning for that course started in about 2018, and we spent a couple years planning the course, and we made a couple steps that were very important. One was that it was a full-fledged economics course, 5 units, it counted towards the major. So it was, it would help you along the way to graduation. Second thing that we did during that planning phase was get it to count as a university distribution requirement. The course has no prerequisites. It counts as an economics course. It counts as a university requirement, distribution requirement. So that helped get the enrollment. It's now one of the biggest courses on campus. It's been extremely successful. The other part of the success of Michael Boskin, and maybe to some extent me, was hiring Anna. Anna is developing a field of economics. Personal finance is now becoming an important field of economics, and it's her energy that is causing that to happen. I'll let Michael add to what I left out.
Well, I'll second everything that Anna and John have said. When we first started the course, there had never been a course like this at Stanford. There had never been no prerequisite personal finance course open to anybody. You could be a freshman music major, a senior economics major, a computer science major. It didn't matter. And however, we started the course, as Anna said, in 2020. And the course started simultaneously with the COVID lockdown and a stock market crash, or correction, a large correction. And so we had to go online immediately, never having taught the class before, never having been taught at Stanford before. We got a lot of help designing it, and we started, and we had almost 400 students and 80 auditors, and including 7 professors and a dean. So there was a pent-up demand, there was an untapped demand, and it's been a pleasure. We've tried to improve it every year with improved pedagogy, examples, interactive online modules and things of this sort. And it seems to be getting quite a remarkable reaction from the students, including the notes we get, et cetera. The most heartwarming thing to me, Stanford has, 20-25% of the students are first generation low income. And many of them come to my office hours late in the quarter or after the quarter ends and tell me that they've become the financial advisor for their family. So the reach is not just to your students, but it's to people they interact with. Maybe their roommate will get better advice, et cetera. So we're very happy with that. And we've always sold the course not just as, how to get rich, how to make money, et cetera. Saving and investing is a big part of the course, but we've emphasized that making sensible financial decisions throughout your life, especially on the major decisions you face throughout your life, saving for retirement, saving your children's education, what kind of car to buy, should you buy or rent a home, where should you locate, how should you do a mortgage, how much you put down, how to deal with taxes, how to deal with insurance, how to keep good credit, etc. All those things, but they have a basic microeconomics foundation. You decide what your goals are, what you're trying to achieve, what the various ways are you might achieve them, what the features are of those various ways to do that, what's the trade-off among them. That's something that economists understand from basic consumer theory, but it's important to teach them that because all those major decisions have a similar structure. So rather than at the last minute grabbing something online about a mortgage or grabbing something online about a 401k they forgot to sign up for the first 7 years they're on a job, all those sorts of things can be made much better. And the important thing is it'll give them more options later on in life about how they lead their life, lead to much less financial stress. And one of the things we know from the psychology profession, the American Psychological Association, is that financial stress is the biggest source of stress even during economic booms and leads to a lot of unfortunate behavior and a lot of unfortunate side effects. So we think that we're onto something in doing this. We've been thrilled that there's been a response from all of you, and we're hoping to continue to interact with you through this medium, through various other ways, to try to build this out and make this sort of a thing available far more broadly throughout America's system of colleges and universities. Anna, back to you.
Thank you, Michael and John. First of all, I'm very excited to teach Econ 43 together with you. It has been a very rewarding experience, and as John mentioned, the fact it satisfies this distribution requirement is also a very important feature of the course. I see that there are already many comments in the chat. Please continue to share with us, who you are, your institution, whether you are teaching personal finance, whether you are interested in teaching personal finance, and maybe tell us something about your experience so far. But now it's time to turn to our first speaker, Laura Rosenbury, the president of Barnard College. Last June, Barnard held a ribbon cutting for the Francine Lefrak Foundation Center for Wellbeing. This newly renovated space at the very center of campus, I visited it and it is beautiful, offer holistic support across 3 key pillars of health and wellness, so physical, mental, and financial. The center goal is to foster resilience and promote lifelong success. President Rosenbury, I'm so glad to have you here with us, even though online. And I know you have a short presentation, so please let's start with that.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, and thank you to the Institute for Financial Decision Making. Anna Maria, you have been an incredible supporter of Barnard College and the Francine A. Lefrak Foundation Center for Wellbeing. We really would not be in the place we are today, but for your guidance, constant advocacy, and support. And I really look forward to taking a few questions from you, Professor Lizardi, as well as hearing from the audience. But let me first say a few words about Barnard College and the Lefrak Center, which, as you emphasize, situates financial decision-making and personal finance within a comprehensive approach to well-being, focused on the physical, mental, and financial well-being. And while, obviously we're focused on our undergraduate student body, we are an undergraduate liberal arts institution, we're mindful of the critical relationship between lifelong success and financial well-being. So let me share some slides that will give everyone hopefully a better sense of what we're doing. I hope you can see those here. And before I talk about the center, let me first just say a little bit more about Barnard itself, for those of you who may not have visited our campus or know much about our history. We were founded in 1889 after decades of urging Columbia University to admit women as students. And after failing in that advocacy, our founders decided to start their own college, Barnard College, to make sure that women had the same kind and level of rigorous education that was accessible to men at Columbia. And we remain, an independent college, but with a distinctive relationship with Columbia, these 136 years later, even after, Columbia went co-ed 42 years ago. So even though we're a separate college with our own students, our own accreditation, our own finances, our own endowment, own board, own president, that's me. We have a long-standing contractual relationship with Columbia that allows our students to take courses at Columbia and vice versa. So the students are going back and forth across Broadway to take courses at both institutions. And all of our tenured faculty at Barnard are also tenured at Columbia. So we're distinct, but we have this historic and current relationship with Columbia. We also really retain our initial access mission. We were started because women could not access Columbia's education. And so now we make sure that we are continuing to provide access. We're committed to social mobility. 16% of our first year students are the first in their families to go to four-year college. 20% are eligible for Pell Grants. And we are both need blind in admissions and meet full financial aid while retaining a very competitive admissions rate of about 10%. So, I like to say that Barnard is one of the, preeminent liberal arts institutions in the United States, and the greatest women's college in the world, in large part because of that relationship with Columbia. And I would say that, women's colleges and other spaces that advance the lifelong success of women remain critically important in this complex moment. So that leads us to the LaFrac Center. In order to advance the lifelong success of women, we have to center questions of holistic well-being. And this is where the center comes in. We began planning, several years ago, but our new physical space that brings all three pillars into the same location did not open until last fall. The fall of 2024. And this new space was designed to unify and focus existing cross-campus well-being initiatives, but also to really put a new emphasis on the holistic approach, that everything had to be under one roof, integrating mental, physical, and financial well-being. And, our goal is obviously to become a model for those who want to think about this comprehensive approach to well-being, but also to think more broadly outside of our campus as well. And as I said earlier, this work is particularly important at this moment. As many of you know, the data shows that meaningful programmatic support needs to be unified across measures, disciplines, and methodologies. Obviously, challenges to physical, mental, and financial well-being overlap with one another. And they have particular and significant intersections with questions about gender and about women's lives. And this is because women leave and enter the workforce more often than men, still to this day. When they leave, sometimes women leave the workforce for good. They have difficulty re-entering. Women's confidence about savings and retirement is lower than their male counterparts. And of course, their health outcomes are tied inextricably to their lifetime earnings. And questions of money, as we heard from our introductory speakers, are significant sources of stress. And we know that stress can exacerbate chronic disease. So for all these reasons, we thought it was particularly important that at Barnard we take action. And you'll see this image from behind the slide about, Barbie needs our help. That's actually earlier this week. It's session 2 of an 8-week financial well-being course led by student ambassadors, the LaFrac ambassadors. These are, peer leaders who are certified in financial education and teach our flagship certificate program. And it's hosted in our new beautiful LaFrac Theater. And this semester we have 100 students participating. We're so excited. And overall, we have 40,000 square feet with distinct spaces for the 3 pillars of well-being. We have, a 4,000 square foot gym, which is the most space we've ever devoted to a fitness center at Barnard before. And then we have dedicated spaces for mental well-being, as you'll see in the center there, and then financial well-being as well. And the physical space and their central location are important. The center is located on the first and ground floors of Barnard Hall, which is the first building you see when you walk into campus. And that just means it's a hub for bringing people together. And we've had more than 50,000 visits to the fitness center in just 10 months. There are waiting lists for programming, and there's just a hunger for more in all 3 of these areas. But let me focus on financial well-being in particular. And I really think, the financial well-being initiatives are the heart of the action. And certainly these are the initiatives that induce the most enthusiasm, sometimes questions and confusion as well, but the most enthusiasm when I describe them. They're like, well, how does finance interact with well-being? And, all of you on this Zoom know the answers to that. But having this center gives us an opportunity to spread the word. As I said before, this financial certificate program is very popular. It's grown from 33 people last semester to 100 this fall. And 56% of them, 56 of students, are part of the first generation community I already referenced. And in their first weeks on campus, these students are already taking ownership of their financial future. And obviously, we have a goal of getting all students to complete the certificate during their time at Barnard. We're also launching a new initiative tonight called the Culture of Money in the United States. And this is aimed at our first year international students. About 15% of our first year students are international. And, you can imagine how important this must feel to our first year students in the aftermath of the Trump administration's announcement of the new restrictions on H-1B visas. And we're already reaching beyond Barnard's gates to provide financial fluency education to high school students as well by partnering with the Young Women's Leadership School Charter Network in New York. Of course, it's also wonderful to see our students already very successful upon graduation, 91% working or in grad school just 6 months after graduation. And currently, the #1 industry to which Barnard graduates go immediately after graduation is actually financial services. And so we see a real synergy here to promote well-being and also connect this to career success for our students who want to take that direction. And how did we get this work underway? It takes an entire community, including Anna Maria and students and faculty, staff, and alumni from around the world. It also helps to have the vision and support of Francine Lefac, who's in this photo in the yellow jacket, whose commitment to integrated well-being, her commitment has really spurred this project forward. And she herself says that she couldn't take control of her life until she took control of her finances. And she is so committed to making sure all women are able to take control of their finances so they are able to move forward in their lives. We also benefit from a strong advisory council, including Professor Lizardi and various corporate members. I think, the center has, now occasioned a fundamental shift in the way we think about well-being at the college, and has also been an occasion to double down on existing well-being initiatives. So as we move forward, we're thinking, of course, about what's next. We want to unify our supportive initiatives, one Barnard approach, making sure this becomes just an integral part of the life of the college. So much more than you would think of a typical center. And I'll conclude on a note about how we'll move the work forward from there. As we seek to unify our campus, we focus on the question that's at the center of a liberal arts education. What does it take to live a life well lived? And so, we're not just thinking about these three pillars, but also about professional well-being, lifelong intellectual well-being that comes with an enduring commitment to ideas, debate, and critical thinking. And, this last piece is especially serious now, as there's been significant questions about the ability of higher ed to rise to the challenge of training, members of our democratic society to disagree civilly, to engage productively, and to maintain the well-being of our institutions. And so as we continue to think about the Lefac Center's work, we will plan to integrate all of these questions into campus-wide work around disagreement. And so I really look forward to your questions. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about Barnard.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Rosenborg. I mean, this is such an impressive initiative. I have to say, I visited the center. It's amazing to see it at the very center of campus. As you enter the gate, here is there in Barnard Hall, and is available for the entire Barnard community, not just the students.
Yes.
So what I would like to do first, I know that not all of us have an opportunity potentially to have such initiative, but I would like to ask our participant whether, and this I know is a question that will also be written in the chat, which is above and beyond any regular personal finance course, does your institution have any personal finance initiative? So big or small, we'd love to hear about them. So please share them in the chat. And this is just for our participants. So we also hear more about some of this work. And I'm amazed to also hear, what you have already done as initiative. I love the student ambassador ideas. I love the certificate, and I love, frankly, that this is really open for the entire community. And this is such an amazing initiative to empower women and female students. And I would like to start with that. Let me ask a few questions to break the ice, but I know that there will be a lot of questions for you from the audience. And also we really would like, even though we are online for this conference, to be to involve everybody, to be interactive. And so I encourage everybody to start writing questions you have for President Rosenborg, and we will be collecting the most common ones and asking those questions to her. But I have a few of them because as a researcher, I have seen this gender gap in financial literacy at every age group and around the world. Can this initiative in New York City in the financial capital of the world send a powerful message on how we can try to reverse this gender gap?
We certainly hope so. That is our goal. And, of course, we've long had some of our graduates go on and work in the financial services industry in New York. In fact, I would say, Barnard College graduates played a big role in diversifying the financial services industry in the 70s and 80s. It was Barnard that sent women into the banks and other offices at that time. But we often left it for those students who loved finance and majored in economics, and we weren't focused on the remainder of the student body. And so this is a way, that's why the central location of the center is so important, to emphasize that everyone needs to have not just financial literacy, but financial well-being, and that it's a fundamental part of living a life well lived, regardless of the career you go into. But being in New York, it helps us, better situate what we're doing into the larger financial services industry.
Michael Boskin has already mentioned this, that, for example, our first generation students bring this knowledge back to their parents. And here in particular, because we are dealing with a female group of students, do you envision spillover effect from this initiative? Students bringing back perhaps this knowledge to their parents, to their mothers,
Yes.
and also to their own community? And did you see any evidence, maybe, I know it just started in October, but do you start seeing any evidence of that?
So it's anecdotal evidence, and certainly we look forward to doing some more rigorous analysis of the data. But certainly for our first generation students, they often become the financial leaders of their families once they're empowered with these tools. But even for our other students whose mothers may have gone to college and had careers, what they come back to me and say is, my mom always was afraid to talk about X, Y, and Z, and for whatever reason, it's just we didn't talk about money. And the certificate program has enabled our students to have, more frank and open conversations with their mothers about finances and both the daughters and the mother's financial futures. So I'm really hopeful that we'll see a much broader effect. And of course, as I mentioned before, we're also going into high school. So we want to see, students younger than
Yes.
our undergraduates, but also, generations after college. We hope this program is really influential.
Yeah, I always say financial education should start as early as possible, when the tooth fairy arrives, or something like this. But, the earlier, the better. And so this
Yes.
is very exciting that you are already reaching the high school. I'm happy to say that in California, we have a new mandate making financial education mandatory in high school. And so,
wow.
This will be an initiative that will be able to reach so many students. We are very excited about it.
Yes.
I want to encourage people to ask questions and put the question in the Q&A, not in the chat, so it will be easier for us to spot them. But I have already, I have another few questions to ask because these are so important topics, and you have such a view and a vision, and I know you are a really visionary leader in this respect. And my next question is also about what you said about Barnard and what Barnard is and does, which is that at the end this initiative is going to add to the many benefits that the students are getting when they come to Barnard. And in this world of a rising cost of education, can you speak of the ROI on education in general and liberal arts education in particular.
Yes, yes. Well, and obviously, I talk to parents of potential students and our applicants on a regular basis. And, one of their questions is, can my daughter really get a job if she gets a liberal arts degree? Or does she need to go somewhere where she can, major in finance or marketing or another field? And I believe, particularly as artificial intelligence is rapidly transforming society and the workplace, it's so crucial to focus on teaching students how to think, how to process information, how to develop flexible frameworks for analyzing situations, rather than focusing on teaching students what to think or just giving them information and having them engage in rote learning. We don't know what the jobs of the future are going to look like. And so it's really important. And I think liberal arts colleges do this really well to focus on that critical thinking development, the ability to process lots of information and to be flexible enough to adapt in a rapidly changing world. That said, I will say, and you saw it on one of the slides, the one thing I would love to see happen at Barnard is for us to follow in the footsteps of Stanford and so many other colleges and universities on the Zoom, and to offer a personal finance course for credit. We are not yet doing that. We have the certificate program. We don't have the course for credit. And I think that's because, in the traditional liberal arts paradigm, courses like that aren't traditionally offered. But I think we can have the best of both worlds. We can continue to double down on the liberal arts and the flexible thinking, while also offering a class like personal finance.
Well, first of all, we will be very happy to offer help, but not only us at Stanford. I know there is a community here available to help you, because there have been many of these courses, and I know there are also courses, for example, in women-only colleges such as Smith College. I know we have people participating from Smith. We know that we have other participants from liberal arts colleges that teaches personal finance. I know Dartmouth, for example, is here. And so we will, we will be very happy to support any initiative and share resources, share the syllabi and so on. So very excited about what you have said. And, also wanted to tell you that at Stanford, we dedicate an entire class to talk about investment in education. That's one of the fundamental financial decisions. We do it before investing in financial markets and before we cover that investment, because as Benjamin Franklin said, the investment in education also pay, the highest, or, certainly maybe, I don't know whether the highest, but pays a very high rate of return. So a very important topic. And let me turn now to, a question that perhaps everybody is thinking about in their head, which is, this is amazing, but, do you have suggestions or recommendation for our participant who would like to start, a similar initiative, of course, at a smaller scale? This is major, it requires a lot of resources and so on. But what can people do to maybe do something similar at their own institution?
Thank you so much for asking that question, because obviously, because we decided to transform a physical space, it was more resource intensive than many schools can afford. Yet the concepts don't necessarily require additional resources. I know, most campuses have separate initiatives already underway, and it's an issue of unifying what's already happening on campus. And a great way to do that is through student ambassadors, the peer educators. And obviously they require some training, some compensation, but it's a wonderful way to empower the peer educators themselves and spread, the learning, and whether it's in the physical well-being, mental well-being, or financial literacy and well-being. And in fact, our LaFrac ambassadors have been so instrumental to our financial certificate program. I hope one day there'll be TAs in our personal finance class.
Right.
but so I don't think, even though the physical space has been very important at Barnard to bring everyone together, there are ways that don't require renovation or new buildings that can really unify existing programs.
Well, it's time to turn to the question from the audience, and I'll in a moment I will also turn to John here if he has some question from you. I mean, I have to say, your insights are very, very helpful, and it's great to hear more about this great initiative. And there is a useful question here that also speak about the community, and it is, how does Barnard engage the local community to promote financial literacy and create awareness for its importance in the well-being of the community?
Well, as I think you emphasized, and I certainly try to, financial stress is an exacerbator of all other forms of stress. And so when we're thinking of well-being, I know many colleges and universities tend to focus on mental health, sometimes physical health as well. And I think in this day and age, particularly as our students are investing in college or thinking about next steps post-college, we can't provide them the support and structures they need if we leave finances to the side. We've talked a lot about a mental health crisis, in society and on our campuses. But we've tried to really broaden that to think of all of the stressors and reasons why mental health might be impacted, and to see if we can take a more proactive, preventative approach, and certainly in letting go of the fear of talking about money, talking about finances, learning basic information can, I think, hopefully really increase student well-being and then lifelong success down the road.
And do you hold sessions and initiative also for the community, the nearby community?
Yes. Even though, I think with the center opening last year, we focused on the students, and then, existing faculty and staff on our campus are now beginning to also take advantage of all three pillars. It started by them working out in the gym, but now they've also been taking advantage of the other two initiatives. And so we really want to reach out, as I said, we're beginning to reach out with the high school students, but also reach out to our broader alumni community and their connections in the surrounding areas of Morningside Heights and Harlem. So, one step at a time, but we certainly don't see this as limited to our insular community. We want this to be something that we can share with the world.
By the way, I've looked at your numbers, the one you also report on the webpage, and I know that the center officially opened in October, but there has been such a great participation, and this is amazing, right? There is definitely a demand for this, and I know, and also from the chat we can see that when people started the initiative, started the course, so many students sign up, so many students are taking personal finance or attending courses. And so, your initiative has also been very successful in that respect. I'm turning to John to see if he has some questions about, like your initiative and thinking about personal finance education for, students and the community.
Well, I was just going to emphasize this emphasis on stress. I think we've all heard the expression deaths of despair, that includes financial despair. And personally, I actually experienced in my family a suicide related to financial issues. So this is at age 18. So I've always been conscious of the stress factor and been trying to avoid it myself and to help my students avoid it. I was going to just mention one thing we've done at Stanford, which is a tiny fraction of our endowment is actually allocated to a sort of club on campus, which where the students determine the investments. It might be a tenth or maybe it's 100th of 1%. It's not a lot, but it's a club. It has a faculty advisor. The students get pretty involved and they research companies, and that struck me as a very low cost thing to do and get people excited about managing an endowment. So I was just going to mention that happens. But what you've done at Barnard is terrific. It's pretty unique, actually, and so congratulations.
No, thank you, and thank you for sharing your story. I too have encountered many people who connect suicide with financial pressures and stress, and feeling like there's no one they can go to talk about it, or a way to strategize about how to move forward. And that's where it does help that we have our three initiatives, our three pillars in one space, and in our mental well-being suite. And it's now hosting our longstanding peer health educator program called the Wellness Spot. These are like peer counselors, and to talk to students who are experiencing stress of all sorts. And since moving their headquarters to the center, to the heart of campus, and attracting more people who are in to see, to participate in the financial well-being programs or the physical well-being programs, they've seen an explosive growth in the number of students they're talking with, and as well as growth in attendance on their own topics like healthy relationships, nutrition, stress management, controlling anxiety about finances. And so that's where the integrated approach is already really paying off, we hope.
I have actually a few questions, which can be practical but very helpful for our audience. So let me actually ask some of them, and there is one that I'm also very interested in. But let's start with the training. What training do your peer coaches receive to become trainers for others?
Yes. So both in our financial well-being area, the certificate program, all of our ambassadors receive a rigorous training themselves before they start teaching their fellow students. And our Wellness Spot peer counselors also go through a training period with mental health professionals before they start talking with students. And of course, they also train to refer students to our formal counseling center, when there is a more urgent need. The peer counselors themselves focus more on just having a safe space to talk, hopefully engage in some proactive preventive measures, but then they also are trained to refer students to our mental health counseling services where there are trained professionals.
And there is this question, which is very helpful, and maybe you can give us some insight, about some of this pushback that sometimes all of us have experienced. And Kelsey's asking, in my state, financial education is required in high school. And many in my university, as a result, are pushing back against adding a personal finance class because they said students already had it. So what justification and perhaps, what do you say for doing it, in your case in high school, but also in college?
Well, the first thing I would say is they should look at your syllabus at Stanford, or even our financial certificate program to look at the topics that are covered, and they're very different than what's covered in high school. I mean, high school is a much more basic, rudimentary focus on, it used to be balancing your checkbook. Now it's about how to maintain safe online banking. But there's not much else beyond that in the high school curriculum, at least in most public schools. Whereas, the Stanford course and many of the courses across the country go into much more depth and provide students with the tools to really evaluate their financial decision points throughout their lives. And that's why it's so important to well-being and lifelong success. And I am so grateful for the model that you and your Stanford colleagues provide. And I know many other colleges and universities are offering similar courses.
Yeah.
And I must say, I've been learning about personal finance for 60 years, and to think that you could learn it all in 10 weeks in high school is pretty ridiculous.
Right? Yes.
Yeah,
it's like saying we teach Shakespeare in high school. You read, one play, therefore we shouldn't teach it in college, right?
Right. Yeah, but this really speaks of sometimes, the many pushback that personal finance and financial literacy has been getting, and we need to overcome these obstacles indeed, and, we'll be happy as a network to provide, research, resources, and, motivation indeed for having such course in college is, of course, a much more advanced course. And it's actually, we benefit from having people having this basic knowledge. I have a question here which is asking about numeracy, in fact, in numeracy, but I'm also going to elaborate a little bit on that, saying, a lot of people are scared of taking a personal finance course because, they think it's about numbers, they think it's about math, that is very complex, it's going to be super, very... a course that is not for them, and unfortunately, disproportionately, maybe female students think that. I love your Barbie example, and when I visited, I love how the message about this course is described, which is about, some of these financial decision, we all have to make it, and it can be accessible and understood by everybody. But can you say more about how can we take down these barriers, and how can we indeed also fight the innumeracy that we see very prevalent, unfortunately, in the population?
Yeah. Well, and this is similar to the long-standing issues that women's high schools and women's colleges have addressed around women with math, women in STEM. And we've made a lot of progress in those areas over time. At Barnard now, almost half of our students major in a STEM field. And computer science is now our third most popular major. So we've made progress in those areas. So now we can take what we learned there and put it in the area of personal finance. You're right. There's still always, I think, some fear and maybe stigma in this area, but we just have to confront it and learn from what's worked in other disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
I also think as professors teaching this course or whatever, you can get these concepts across without using high-level math. We use absolutely no calculus in this personal finance course. We do use what I would call 8th grade algebra, and even that's not there's not a lot of it, but a little bit of it. So I don't think the math requirement has to be very high to get these lessons across.
Yeah, there is even a comment here, actually from Daniel Chi that says, finance classes are perceived as math classes, right? But it doesn't have to be like this. And, it's important that we also try to attract the humanities students. And I have to say, these are the students that are often not in our courses, and we would love to be able to attract more of those. So, by the way, I was impressed by the statistics about the STEM, but I wanted to tell you that at Stanford, half of our students are doing computer science. But I also have to say the personal finance course has now become a course where students now become more interested in economics. So it has become a very good entryway course into economics as well. And so we are very happy about that as well.
No.
There are actually some questions which I think are very important about what is the vision for this center in the future?
Mm-hmm.
How do you see this center, evolving in the next, say, 5 years or so?
Mm-hmm.
And what are, some of the activity you would like to see, you would like to add, and so on?
Right. Well, so, continuing to focus on integrating the center throughout our campus, and then taking the impact of the center to communities beyond the Barnard community. Those are our two goals. So, even though we, are calling it a center and we have a dedicated space that is absolutely lovely, we don't want anyone to think it's exclusive to the center programs. Instead, it should be seen as the heart of the life of the college, including, the intellectual life of the college. So hosting a lot of events with other units at the college, academic departments, our Access Barnard, which provides support for first-gen and low-income students, as well as international students. That's why we're doing that partnership on finance or money in the U.S. for our international students. And then thinking, how can we take this integrated approach and make sure more people understand the intersections between these three pillars of well-being, and our students can be ambassadors, not just for other students, but to our local communities and our alumni community.
Yeah. This is a question related to something that a lot of people are always asking, right, to assess sometime whether they should do such initiative, which is, does it work, right? And so do you have a plan to assess the effectiveness of this initiative? I know you are already doing it because I saw, some of the numbers,
Right.
It's amazing what you already have achieved in a sense, in just a few months. But, for addressing this question, what do you plan to do? And let me tell you, it's a question that it's important to take into account, because at the end, nothing, speaks like success.
Exactly. And certainly we are, tracking the attendance and enthusiasm for various initiatives to see what is most speaking to our student body and what might not be speaking to them at the moment, and how to adjust. So certainly we're keeping track of data in that way, but we're also beginning with the center staff, and we don't have a large staff, but we do have 4 to 5 employees who are focused, on this integrated approach, and they're beginning to develop qualitative instruments to also measure the effects, like we've discussed here. How does it affect students, own financial planning and decision making, but also that of their families? How does it help them with their decisions about taking out additional loans for graduate school, or finding their first apartment in New York that's not, a Barnard residence hall, and how to get the first month's last month and deposit ready. So there's lots of instruments that we're developing so we can measure and adjust what we're doing, but also hopefully provide some data for others, so they can learn from both our successes, but also, maybe some of our mistakes as well.
And I have a question that we have been thinking a lot about as well, which is how do you engage with parents and how do you engage with the alumni? I mean, in many ways, I have to say you have amazing alumni, and
Yes.
Francine has been, and actually Francine did this for her mother,
Yes.
who was an alumna of Barnard, which is such an amazing legacy. So after this big initiative, have alumni reacted, and how do you engage with the parents and overall the Barnard connections that you have in the heart of New York City?
Yes. So actually, I'm not in New York City today. If I was, I would be hanging out with the therapy dogs that are in the LaFrac Center today as part of our mental well-being. But I'm in Atlanta at Agnes Scott College, another women's college, for a conference. And last night I met with some of our parents in Atlanta whose students go to Barnard. And all of them, without prompting, talked about how pivotal the LaFrac Center was, particularly the parents of students who are now juniors and seniors. So, who started at Barnard without the center, and they now have it. And their comments, went from the gym hour should be expanded,
Right.
to one of the mothers saying, "Can I take the financial certificate program?" Right. So it proved the point that we were trying to make earlier, and there was just real enthusiasm, and when they hear that it's not just physical and mental, but also financial, they're like, that's what I was missing when I was in college. And certainly many of our alumni say the same. Like, I wish I'd had this when I was a student here at Barnard.
Yeah.
So that's why it will be important to, think of this as part of lifelong learning. It doesn't stop when you graduate from Barnard. And now we have this initiative, and we need to make sure our alumni from future or from past generations can have access to it, as well as our students' parents who want to take advantage of what their students are doing.
Yeah, I have to say the same experience here. During Parents Weekend, we hear the parents saying, I wish I had this course when I was at Stanford. The alumni have been so engaged with our initiative. They are very supportive. They want to be engaged even more. And again, they said, I wish I had this initiative, I had this course when I was here at Stanford. So, again, for some of the participants here, I have to say, alumni and parents have been an incredible support group for all of us.
Let me just say one thing about this conference. At least I'm an economist. This is pretty unique. I have been an economist for more than 50 years. I never was invited to a conference about teaching or helping students. It's always research. It's always the economy. But you don't hear much about students. This conference, we're concerned about helping students, and which is teaching. I think it's great, and it seems like it's not very common that a bunch of professors get together and talk about teaching.
And teaching and student life outside of the classroom as well.
Absolutely.
It's both.
So I have a request here from some of our participants, if you can share some of your, certification program or some of your initiative, and I hope, they can reach to the director, for example, of the Financial Literacy Center or the Financial Wellness Center for this. And I also welcome people to look online and look at their initiative, because it's very impressive and so on. I would like to end this session. I have to say, I wish we could continue for, much more time, but we have a limited time. I just want to read a quote from Francine LeFrac. And then I leave, maybe one final, maybe closing remark for you, Professor Rosenbury. I just, we just saw from you your vision, and we are so excited that the president has been so engaged and able to do such initiative. But let me read what Francine said. The Center innovative approach to physical, mental, and financial well-being will equip women with the tool to excel during their time at Barnard and throughout their lives. This center represents my heartfelt commitment to building women's confidence, independence, and financial freedom. What can you add?
I cannot say it better. And that her vision, was so crucial to bringing this to Barnard. At the same time, it dovetails with what our mission and vision has been as a college since 1889, when we said, of course, women deserve the same rigorous education as men and as the male students at Columbia. And so I'm just so grateful for Francine's vision and financial support, as well as the support of our entire advisory council, including Anna Maria, Professor Luzardi, and many of our alumni and corporate partners who have really made this initiative a success. And thank you all for giving me this opportunity to share some of our experiences. And I really hope to meet many of you in the chat at some point, and to learn more about what you're all doing, because I think this is an exciting new chapter in higher education.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Rosenbury. This has been an exciting session, and it really speaks of how we can empower our students so they can learn these important skills that are going to be important throughout their lives. So thank you again for all of this, and it's now time to turn to our second session, which is actually going to be on AI. And we are actually going to start with a poll. And so let me see. Here we have the poll on the screen. And I would like to see, we are going to take just a minute to see how many people are using AI in their classes. And I am very happy that we are already, let's see for a moment where this is happening. And happy to see that the majority, I mean, I don't want to say necessarily the majority, but many are indeed using AI in their teaching. Thank you. I know our set of next speaker is now joining us at the table. And I'm just looking yet again to see some of the answer to the questions, and happy to say that we have a good group of people that are indeed using AI already. So I am very excited to turn now to today's second speaker, Dr. Ranjot Nag from the Stanford School of Medicine. He will speak about how AI works and its application to personal finance education. And I have to tell you, the audience, I've taken his course on AI, and I am just so delighted to have you come here and speak to us. Your course was fantastic. And I'm, this is, why it's exciting. It's so exciting to be here at Stanford and to have you, to be able to take courses from you. And I will have Professor Ken Singleton here to moderate this session. And again, we would like to be interactive. We have asked for a presentation because we want to, the idea was to distill, even though like just in half an hour, your amazing course. We are, I know it's hard to do in a short period of time, but, please, in a sense, tell us a little bit more about, like how, also a little bit more about AI, right? All of the promises and all of the risks that are there. And I know that Ken, has already a few questions about, how we can use it. How can we best use it for our personal finance education? I have to say, sometimes people tell me, well, now that there is AI, I don't need even, to take a course, which, something that we need to discuss. And yet again, we of course want a lot of interaction from the audience. So we will, ask questions and, and then there will be a lot of questions as well. We can ask you, but please.
Perfect. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. This is going to be a whirlwind sort of view. I mean, I saw 65% of the people have been using AI, but we'll talk about what is AI and how does it work? Because a lot of people are using it, but they don't work. And I'm actually very keen on trying to really educate people on the workings, because people are frightened about it. They're sort of wondering how to use it. And it is quite a complex subject, and my clicker's not working. Let's see. Let me have a look. There we go.
Here we go.
All right. No, it's delayed. Maybe I'll go through 2 slides. Who am I, first of all? Thank you for that introduction. I really have 3 personas. My first AI system was 40 years ago. I'm a teacher. I taught 2,000 people. I teach both in the medical school, but also this evening class that Anna took. And everyone from students to Nobel Prizes in the class. Everyone wants to know how AI works. But I'm also an inventor. I'm still inventing. I sold my first company to Motorola, second one to BlackBerry, third one to Apple. And also I'm a venture capitalist. Those are my 3 personas. And this clicker's not working, is it? Right.
Yeah,
Oops, no, let's go. This is me 30 years ago. It's computers that mimic the brain, and we're still talking about that. And this is like AI is not 4 years old, it's 40 years old, and maybe even 90 years old if you go back to Alan Turing. The term artificial intelligence was coined in 1956, the term machine learning 1958. And so people are asking, is this just a continuation of the Industrial Revolution, or is it different this time? And then why should teachers care about AI in finance? And we're seeing AI at Stanford, certainly, pretty much every department is now talking about AI. The law department, social sciences. It's not merely the bastion of the computer science department. And fun fact, neural networks, we'll talk about what those are, were invented really at Stanford, not in the computer science department, but in the psychology department. And AI can be a commoditizer, but also an equalizer. You can access all these people who said, I can't do this, I can't do that. And really, how do you augment your teaching ability? And the main thing I want to get across, if nothing else you get across, you can build your own systems yourself. Right now, there's 100 million people who can code in the world. That's changing to 2 billion. All of you will be able to do that. I'm not going to teach you how to do that. It's another course, but you can actually teach yourself. We're going to a world where you don't need engineers to build your own tools. And we're still having difficulty on the slide clicker. Maybe someone's going to click it for me. Okay, I think someone's clicking it for me. Right, there's the types of AI that are relevant to teaching. The current thing you've all been working on is GPT, which is language weprocessing. But it's actually been old. It's older than that. It's recommendation systems on your Netflix system. And then, we've got some economists here. It's sort of predictions, simulation models, what if. And what can you actually do for education? You can scale your time. The course that Anna took, I had 500 students in that course. I didn't have time to give office hours for every single person. You can create a digital twin of yourself quite easily to be able to free up time and give people the chance to actually interact with you, your digital self. Now, the thing is, will you sort of over-rely on these tools? Will students, we have to teach them not to take AI at face value. It's like talking to a human. You read the newspaper, you watch the television news, you don't simply assume what they're saying is accurate. So we get into that stage where people are critiquing AI for hallucinations. Well, humans have hallucinations too. Humans give sort of embellishments to the truth. We're seeing AI systems do that too. Privacy, how do you set the settings in these AI systems so it's not training on your data? Maybe you don't care, maybe the students don't care, but the ability to be able to do that. And literacy in AI. There are a number of courses out there, some of them are online and free. Again, Stanford, we have a few that are online that anyone can take, just a few $100s. And just get the basics, and you don't need to take a whole degree in it. You can just take a few lectures. And so what is AI? Before we talk about what AI is, what is intelligence? Real intelligence. Real intelligence is reasoning, thinking, problem solving, consciousness. And artificial intelligence is usually not that, even with GPT. Artificial intelligence is usually vertical problems. In the olden days, it was sort of robots that did vacuum cleaning, your fingerprint recognizer, maybe stock market prediction. We now have language as an abstraction layer for intelligence, but still it doesn't have drive yet. It doesn't have emotion yet. And the debate now in the next few years, will it have those things? So-called the definitions of artificial intelligence, there are many definitions. Machine learning is really the numerical recipes that implement AI. And then AI, the real technical definition is human-like performance. And you may think it's given like human-like performance, but I think we can always predict when we get an essay coming through, we can tell whether they've used AI to write it or not. It's usually a bit more long-winded. And so there's two concepts, really, weak AI and strong AI. Strong AI is sometimes generalized, called generalized artificial intelligence, really human performance. Weak AI is everything out there. And then there's a new concept, super intelligence. That's beyond human intelligence. So the current AI may be working at the level of a single PhD at 100 times, 1 time speed. Super intelligence is 100 PhDs at 100 times speed. And now in the literature, all these terms are used interchangeably. And really, the cat's out of the bag. People debate, oh, no, that's not AI, that's machine learning. And, but really, this is not just the lay press in the New York Times, also even the academic press. People are using all these terms interchangeably. So it gets everyone on the same page. And pretty much every department is looking at AI and can bring their specialism to bear. In fact, I'm not sure if the economists know this, but there's a technique where you learn how to train the AI. Some of it was invented by the economists. And I was in the psychology department. I'm an engineer by training, but my postdoctoral work was in psychology. And we had to invent something called neural networks. I'll go on to that in a second. We also had I guess the philosophers are missing in this chart. And we're doing these things. Yeah, we talked about weak AI, strong AI. The underlying pinning, and what I want to give you is how does AI work? Because often in these courses and lectures, they just talk about AI as a black box. And often people will say, oh, we don't know how it works. Well, actually, we know exactly how they work. And the underlying foundation is a concept known as neural networks. This is really debatedly a 50-year-old concept. But we now have more data, more computing power, and they're sort of akin to how the brain might work. The brain's got 100 billion neurons. This is a cartoon picture of a neuron, and each neuron is connected to thousands of other neurons, and we make a mathematical model of a neuron. So those of you who are not mathematicians, we take inputs and we weight them and we add them up, and if they're big enough, we send them on to another neuron, and that's how sort of the brain works. In a simplified way, and we have architectures of lots of these neurons connected to each other, and the architecture, really the learning, is in what we call the weights, how they're connected to each other. Just giving you a bit of intuition that the intelligence does have a foundation of numbers. It is actually just numbers. What these neural networks do is what we call nonlinear classification. So lots of problems you can just do with a straight line. Now, you can divide caterpillars from ladybugs very easily with a straight line, because ladybugs are short and stubby and caterpillars are long and thin, and you might plot length and width and draw it a straight line. Most of it interesting problems, including finance, if we'd like to predict the stock market, they're what we call nonlinear. They're so complicated, we can't do it with a single straight line. We have to use what's called nonlinear, multiple things. Now, maybe you can simulate it with lots and lots of little lines out there, as they call it a multiple linear regression, but really what's great about these, they can solve really complicated problems. Now, what we are with GPT today, the history of AI was trying to recognize speech, recognize handwritten characters, recognize pictures. These are like data problems. What's great in the last few years is what we call language processing. And this is also like 30, 40 years old. In Google, you would type in a word and it would predict the next word. And typically it will predict the next word based on the previous two words. And this doesn't really surprise. Spell checking as well. You misspell it, it'll predict it, or you can get away with it. And this looks a bit hairy. These are lots of neural networks connected together. It's called a transformer network. But what's interesting, if you just look at the bottom part of this slide, instead of just 2 words, it says it's actually got 500 words. We call that a context window. So when we're training AI, when we're predicting AI, when you're typing a prompt in, you're putting dozens of words, maybe 100 words, maybe you're putting a whole book. And that's what we call the token concept window. No, ChatGPT is 128,000 tokens, which is roughly a word. Gemini has 1 million words. If you try and put more than 100,000 words into ChatGPT, it won't do very well, but Gemini will do a bit better. But there are other disadvantages and advantages with these systems. And when this first came out, OpenAI trained it on the entire internet, and they said, oh, we're not going to release it to anyone because it's too dangerous. This is 2019, by the way, and then 3 weeks later they decided to publish it. At the time, we kind of half laughed at that. We thought it was a PR thing, but now we actually think maybe it is a bit dangerous. We have to have that discussion now. We at least have to have a discussion. And what are tools? You can think of you can separate into 2 things. Foundation models, which is the main, what we call large language models, ChatGPT, Gemini, Cloud, which is the core LLMs. Usually hundreds of millions of dollars have gone into them. And there's applications built on top of those. Chatbots, character building, book writing software, drug discovery platform, where we don't rebuild, we build on top of those LLMs, and those are applications. You can build your own as well. It's not that hard. And Cloud and OpenAI are used the most in market share. It's you hear a lot about DeepSeek. That's used a bit more. DeepSeek is the cheapest to use. It's actually also open. Those weights I talked about in neural networks, typically most of these companies don't give you the weight, so you can't build on top of them. A few companies will give you them. Meta famously do give you the weights. So sometimes you read about the New York Times, I'll talk about the weights. No, those are the neural network weights that I was talking about earlier. Consumers tend to use ChatGPT rather than enterprises. Enterprises are building applications on top. And there's a new concept known as vibe coding. Some of you may have heard of this. And this is an idea where I said, like, all of you, a year from now, we'll be doing AI, we're building applications like it's PowerPoint. Sometimes, usually I give a little demo, but you can actually go to these kinds of platforms. The term was coined by Andrej Karpathy, who was one of the OpenAI co-founders. And all you do is simply type in plain language. Please build a site that will take the parameters of the personal finance characteristics of a student, how old they are, how much money they've got in savings, what kind of profession they're going to go into, their predicted salary. Maybe it will determine have the AI to decide what salary they're going to get, their health style, maybe it will predict even the age they're going to get to. And you can just build that whole application yourself just by writing English to be able to do that. And the companies that build these, there's a little mini industry of companies. This is their like pitch. You've heard of YouTube. Well, you can build it in 30 minutes. Famously, Reid Hoffman, who invented LinkedIn, rebuilt LinkedIn in 45 minutes over the weekend. So these are the kinds of the applications that you can actually use. And they're using AI. What they're using AI is to write the code for you. And they're built on these foundation models. And so personal finance is also linked to careers. My prediction, and by the way, I know nothing. This is my own personal opinion, but right now, probably the last 50, 60 years, you want to go get a job. That's what job am I going to get? I think we're going to enter an era of artisan economies, where it's your own job, more entrepreneurs. And the idea is, Sam Altman, OpenAI, famously said, one day there'll be a company, and it'll be a unicorn. A unicorn is $1 billion valuation business, and it will only have one employee. Everything else will be done. It will just tell AI systems to do it. So there's a little chart by one of the venture firms saying, well, the new company of tomorrow is only going to have 3 people. Maybe it's not 1, but maybe 3 people, sub 10. And you just need the visionary. You just need the numbers guy. You need the sales guy, and that's it. Maybe you don't even need the sales guy, because the AI will do it for you. We can sort of project. That's one of the discussions in your teaching, because I think when I talk to young people, they're very worried about what kind of jobs they can get, particularly the entry level. Will AI do it for you? And there's all kinds of studies out there, market studies, that say we're going to lose 1 billion jobs. There's also a set of studies we're going to gain 1 billion jobs, right? And it's part of the discussion. I think all 3 of us here, we'll probably have an opinion, but your students have. Sometimes the young people are more attached to what's actually going to happen than we are. They've got their own genre. When I was working on speech recognition in 1983, I was telling my parents I had no clue what I was talking about, right? And 20 years later, it's on your phone and everyone understands it. So almost they've got to not check their brain in at the door, put their own mind and what's trending in their own area, where we as teachers, we might not know as much. So what jobs will go away? The famous ones, us computer scientists, we're always joking about radiologists, and we're saying, you've got a niece or a nephew or a child who wants to enter medicine. We say, that's fine, but whatever you do, don't be a radiologist, because our AI systems can do better than that. And we'll talk about financial advisors. Are they going to be? So we had a radiologist come into class and to tell us, he said, yeah, the profession's really worried about this, but you know what? We're going to be superhuman compared to the other medical disciplines. We're going to have these tools that are superhuman, that will let us be 10 times more productive, more accurate. And so this debate, even these jobs that are going to be at risk of being replaced, and I've put financial advisors there, will they be replaced, or will they just be more intelligent, supercharged? And there'll be a whole set of new jobs. I've talked about the entrepreneurs, the actual artisan businesses that will pop up, all of a sudden not beholden to engineers. The rise of social sciences that Laura Ann talked about just before. All of a sudden, be creative. What I'm telling young people is put yourself in creative in scenarios, and that's probably one of the things in financial advice. Force yourself to be creative. Force yourself to talk to other people. Team projects, interaction is one of those things. This is a chatbot that I'm not sure who've you heard of the Sortino ratio. It's a successor to the Sharpe ratio, who Sharpe was at Stanford. And it's a very simple concept, really, that risk can just be computed with standard deviation. Very simple concept. But of course, standard deviation goes up and down. And Sortino came along and said, well, let's just get rid of the the top part, when it's going up, that actually means it's unrisky. And so made a little modification. Both Bill Sharp and Frank Sorti, they're both about 90 years old now. And I got to know Professor Sortino. I said, well, let's just make a chatbot out of you. Oh, how do I do that? It really is, there's a mini industry of tools, and this is super. I'm an advisor to them. All you do is upload your lecture notes, you upload your any YouTube links, any videos you've done, and you can just make a version of yourself, a digital twin of yourself. And I use that for office hours. I think, I'm not sure if Anna used it, but I used it for office hours. When you've got 300 students, you can just, and then it makes them, they don't, if they're shy, they can ask questions that they may not be comfortable in an open forum. So that's one tool you can use. Another tool you use is ChatGPT Builder. You need the paid version of ChatGPT, but it's just the $20 version. And you can make your own ChatGPT version that's limited to your domain. You can set this as an exercise for the students. You'd have to get them to subscribe to the paid version, the lowest level of paid version, or you could build your own thing. This is other ideas, getting students to build, make an advisor for seniors, make an advisor for students, make an advisor for 40-year-olds. You sort of, again, get them to decide what they're going to build. Other tools I really like, Notebook LM. Some of you maybe some of you can put in the chat what tools you're using and what you like, because we're now in an industry, there's tools everywhere. And this is where you just simply upload your lecture notes and it will create a very, very realistic podcast of your lecture. So your 2-hour lecture can be condensed in 2 hours, in 20 minutes, and often it explains it even better than you can. And as a side thing, it'll also generate quizzes, flashcards, so you don't have to. And it's really quite good. It's invented by Google, and it's free. So I use that. There are lots of other tools. There are PowerPoint. I think the PowerPoint generators are not quite there yet, but they're coming along. I mean, these slides, by the way, I did them myself. I didn't use an AI system. They probably look like that. They're not as pretty as AI ones. There's also some, I think the next couple of years, you'll see PDF to video. That you'll be able to change your lecture notes and create videos of yourself. Maybe, again, you'll be scaling yourself, not just to the 30 people or even the 300 people. Maybe it's 3,000 people you can get to. What I'm personally working on, and I've got at least 10 books in me, and I have no time to write the books. I'm writing software to help me write the books. And also trying to turn books into videos, books into games. That's my sort of research area. And you really have to also talk about the problems of AI as well. Certainly bias, and AI is trained on data. Data may have built-in bias, even within the systems, the foundation models. Famously, Grok has goes further to the edge than other models. And you really got to teach the students, you're critical about the AI, but you've got to teach the students about AI, just like they hear something, and particularly in finance, because there's so much, I guess, phishing or scamming, and somebody tells you something of an investment opportunity that's just too good to be true. Sometimes it is true. Sometimes it is true. I can remember, being offered to buy SpaceX shares when it's a $6 billion valuation. I guess it's 400 now. At the same time, also being given offered to buy Theranos shares as well, which, of those of you who don't know, maybe a bit younger, it's also got some Stanford linkages, unfortunately, it turned out not to be a good investment. You've got to teach them that, but it's the same thing about teaching AI. There are regulations popping up, but one of the things is building case studies, and I think the next thing, you will be expected to build case studies. You'll be expected to use these tools because everyone else will be doing it. And then teaching your students how to cross-check what they're hearing, and see that AI is not an authority, just like I'm not an authority, and Ken's not an authority, and Anna's not an authority. We have our own opinions. There's a whole academic literature and industrial literature, and you have to not check your brain in at the door. And also talk about fairness, talk about ethical finance, who gets what. Now, how do you teach people in this world of AI? Aren't they all going to cheat? Aren't they all going to just write their own essays with ChatGPT? And as I look around, every university seems to, sometimes it's a university level policy. Stanford, it seems to be a professor issue, whatever the professor wants to do. Here's what I do. I ask the students to declare if they're using AI. They don't have to use it, but if they are using it, let's just say they're using it. If they're using it, I expect higher standards. I expect a much better, it's a bit like when the pocket calculators came in. All of a sudden people said, don't use pocket calculators. Then they said, you must use pocket, because all of a sudden you could have any number. And then, of course, if the AI makes errors, they get negative marks. And I know some courses are doing like written tests in a room, no machines, no electronics. My personal opinion is that's not scalable or practical on that, but some professors are trying that. But what I do is really just make them declare it and eventually expect higher results. Look, I've got a spelling mistake in this slide, and so it's proof I'm not using AI for my slides. But if you want to talk to me, here's my digital twin. My email's on every slide, ronjohn@stanford.edu. You can do that. And we can just go to questions now and discussion. Ken, I'd love to talk. What do you think, Ken? What do you think of all this stuff?
That was great, Ron. So thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. I'm Ken Singleton, Professor Emeritus Finance here at Stanford GSB, and have the pleasure of engaging you in some conversation. So let's start at a high level here. You touched on many dimensions of AI and how it could end up influencing the classroom. So one is how AI is used to implement your teaching and your teaching style and how you're going to run the classroom, et cetera. Another place is that the students themselves are going to be using AI, as you mentioned, and part of what they're going to be doing is using AI to see if it might be helpful for their own financial decisions. And then thirdly, either partly through your class or certainly when they go out into the real world, the whole finance industry is actively using AI. I'm involved, in the same spirit as you are with several VC funds. I see lots and lots of pitch decks for fintech companies, and it's if you don't have AI somewhere in the deck, you feel you're going to be passed over by the world, I guess. How would you? What sort of words of caution or advice for people teaching personal finance would you give on maybe particularly the second two? I mean, you talked some about how you would use AI in the classroom, although I imagine there'll be some additional questions on that. But as regards the students using it in their own financial decision-making, possibly, and also in possibly guarding themselves against the use of AI in influencing their own decisions in the real world. How do you set up cautionary tales or advice to the students, and in this case to the teachers of those students, to think about those issues?
Yeah, well, I think that it is commoditized. We touched on the Sortino ratio, the Sharpe ratio. It's not that hard, but it's something now you can just plug into ask GPT and say, I've got these basket of stocks and tell me what their Sortino rate and tell me what it means, and it'd probably do it. Whereas before, Ken, you'd probably make your student get a spreadsheet out, and you have to teach them a little bit of math. We heard about before. You can get to a feel now you don't need the math. You get the intuition of what it does or what it was. You can teach them to talk about, well, it's like measures risk, but you don't need to do that. And but then the students need to be taught not to check your brain in at the door, right? Just like if someone gives you the spreadsheet in the olden days, maybe the professor will give you a spreadsheet, the TA gives you the spreadsheet, your fellow student. You might want to check it, right, before you use it in real life. You might want to check it before you hand in your homework, right? If your fellow student had done it. I think it's the same thing, but you're going to get a little bit more confidence once you see, unlike your fellow student who you know is fallible the second time or the third time, you might have a bit more confidence. Oh, it worked this time, and it's going to do things. But we do know that these hallucinations pop up. So I think it's unstoppable. They will use them, right. And I think we sort of got to lean into it and make them cleverer. It just makes you clever. It makes a student cleverer, and so the teacher's going to have a different kind of style. Now you're going to expect more from the students. All of a sudden, you can give them more complicated things. But guess what? You as a professor, you as a teacher, is going to have to come up with more complicated things that were before only a PhD level or master student level are now going to be a high school sort of teaching, right?
Yeah, I expect that's, excuse me, that all of that will be the case. I guess I might add in a couple of things. I think recently I went to ChatGPT just to try this with a retirement question to see how it was going to recommend one versus another strategy for sort of a life cycle retirement planning problem. And it gave me these beautiful, nice pictures and charts and some advice. And then I typed in, it seems to me you overlook the fact that there's an upper limit on how much you can contribute every year to this particular account. And it comes back, oops, sorry, let me do that again. And so it goes back and does it again. So they're not checking the brain at the door is a big...
Exactly. But humans would do that too. Yeah. You almost have to think it's a human on the other, even though it's not a human.
Right. And then the other side of it, I think, is I think it just leads to a modification of the types of advice or the principles, or maybe I would like to say we want to teach in a personal finance course about, how you want to spend your time, your values, the role of indexing, and maybe not putting all your eggs in one ChatGPT basket with regard to financial advice. I also think the privacy issue that you mentioned in your talk is fairly critical here, in that I wonder how many students really appreciate the amount of their own privacy they're giving up in signing up for a lot of these financial apps that are using, many of them, AI to guide their lives. And at least they should be aware of that if they're not. And maybe they don't care.
Yeah, I get the feeling young people don't care.
Yeah,
they'd rather have the convenience.
Right. I think that's right. I think there's... So one of the questions that has come from the audience is I think interesting and speaks to something you just mentioned in passing. And I think there's AI can do a couple of different things here, and the word polarization is used. And the specific question that came from the audience was active versus passive, which is something I was just implicitly referring to with indexing versus getting ChatGPT tell you how to invest. But I think there's a related question, maybe we can tie these together, and about related sort of polarization in a different way. There's this enormous heterogeneity and disparity, we might say, of wealth and opportunity in the country. And so AI has this potential to bring us to a more level playing field. What are your views, if you have them formulated, on how that might play out in the personal finance arena?
Yeah, personal finance. Well, it started off with these, companies like Wealthfront and Betterment years ago.
Yes.
Which is something called portfolio theory, where you take a basket of stocks that counter-correlate and reduces the risk, and a pretty simple calculation to be done. And you can now, I guess, go to Fidelity and choose a 2025 fund, or the 2030 fund, or 2035 fund, etc. So those tools, I think, is going to be now accelerated, and more complicated tools that historically were to the levels of hedge funds would use, etc. All of a sudden you might be able to use them. Now, the issue is, maybe it's the same thing. The hedge funds themselves don't know how it works because there's so much math behind it. You might have access to those kinds of mechanisms. You say, well, I'm willing to give up some upside in return for having no downside. Maybe the stock market gives me 8%. Well, I'm willing to settle for 6% as long as I don't get that minus 40% that occasionally the stock market gives me. How would you do it? So hedge funds know how to do that. And then you probably know how to do that, Ken. Professors of finance and economics. But personal finance, students, teachers, practitioners, probably is a bit too involved. My expectation is the landscape will get more, these tools are now going to be more available to you. But don't check your brain in at the door. Right. If it's too good to be true, right? Exactly. And that's what we need to train our students to do, or anybody who finance. What could? We've had, as you know, Nobel Prize winners get into trouble in the history of finance. Long-term credit bank, etc. So you think, well, these people are so sophisticated, even they can get it wrong, and I think that's the main thing. But you can get access to tools, but you need to question them, right? Right.
You need to question them. Actually, sort of in that spirit, and actually, there's a related question here that just popped up on the chat about how do you sort of convince students to be interested in a personal finance training or course when it appears that AI can handle everything for you? And I think the Ranjan just partially answered that question in again emphasizing don't check your brain at the door. I can add that if you look at what hedge funds are actually doing, many of them, the most sophisticated ones that are using AI. I mean, AI and the amount of data they can process is implicitly involving millions of parameters. So there's this massive dimensionality problem. And it's an interesting mind twister as to how it could possibly be with a limited amount of data, we can have so many parameters. But the way that the hedge funds are implementing this in practice is not to check their brain at the door. What they're doing is they're overlaying economic and financial theory on top of the data. That is, they're disciplining AI with economics and finance in order to guarantee that certain principles of financial thinking and decision-making, risk-return trade-off and issues like that, are actually formally constrained and implemented through the AI. And it's then that they're going to take it out to their clients and put their own money on the table for that. So again, understanding the principles, understanding the sort of the key core financial decision-making principles is central, I think, to working with AI and partnering with AI in your own decision-making.
I think it's also the title of the course. I mean, I teach longevity science. I just gave a lecture, longevity science for skeptics. People want to live forever. Is that even possible? I can imagine, of course, stock market prediction for skeptics, right? Someone who tells you I can predict the stock market. That's probably one of the first lessons. Someone who tells you, you think you should have radar going up, but with these new tools, maybe you can predict. I know. So how do you analyze that? If someone comes up with an investment opportunity, how do you do that?
Right. Well, there's a lot of historical evidence on timing the market, and I don't know that ChatGPT will change that, but we'll see. Maybe if enough people are doing
super intelligence, 100 PhDs,
they'll distort things. You also mentioned in passing the ethical side of all of this, and the word fairness comes up. And I think you passed over it probably fairly quickly in one of your slides, but one of the we have many ways to think about what fairness is in the economics world and financial world, and one of the unfortunate core theorems here is that we can't satisfy them all simultaneously.
That's correct.
It's theoretically impossible to do that.
Mathematically impossible, yeah.
Exactly. And so if we recognize that, fairness becomes a really difficult problem and a challenging one. And regulators have been looking at that in terms of fair lending laws in the United States, for example. for a long, long time. And one of the inherent challenges is that if you strive to avoid the use of protected characteristics in your decision-making in financial markets, you will almost certainly end up forcing cross-subsidization or benefiting one group over another.
Yeah. By the way, I don't think that's an obvious concept. Just getting that concept to students.
Yeah,
I think
it's not obvious.
Yeah,
No.
people say, well, can't we just optimize it? Isn't it just mathematical? But that's one of the, even mathematicians have to be told that, I've found.
Is that
you
right?
can't optimize everything. You can't
can't.
get false positive, false negative accuracy all at the same time. And that's
not
why
possible.
politicians do, they do have to put policy on top. We're just going to have to decide.
You have to make judgments.
You've got to say, we're just going to say, no, we're not going to, we're going to favour this class because they've been unfavoured for 100 years, or, it's just a decision because you can't satisfy everything all at the same time.
It's impossible to do that. Exactly. So how do you see, I mean, if you put your regulatory hat on
Yes.
now, and you as an expert in AI were advising the politicians on how to think about this, how to bring fairness into all of this, and we had a group of them in the audience, what would you be saying?
Yeah, well, the first thing you have to say, because I think there is a set of people who think you can optimize everything, and the second thing you say, well, in the inputs into these models, they'll say, well, if I just remove race out of the model, is that okay? And as you know, they're proxies to race, there's location, and so it's very, very difficult to do that. And then you have to say, well, it is politics. We live in a divisive country these days. But if you take both sides, if you take a balanced view, you say, well, what side are you going to be on? And you're going to have to, that is a policy decision. You're going to, if people don't like your policies, you'll be unelected. If they like it, you'll be more elected. And different groups, different people, maybe you want to go out of a way to favour because they're being disadvantaged. Another view says, well, that was yesterday, this is now. I'm not responsible for yesterday's. There's kind of, something you might argue is the right answer, but the other view might say, no, it's not a right answer. So I think you have to sort of tell them as a policymaker, as a teacher, you say, look, you guys are policymakers. You're going to have to decide, and you're going to have to figure out what you want to do, and you'll be hit no matter what decision you make. There'll be one group that won't like it.
Put your values on the table.
Yeah, put your values on the table.
Yeah. I think we're getting towards the end of the session. Let me bring you back to the grounding of AI in the classroom. I suspect, just skimming over some of the questions here, that there's quite a bit of heterogeneity in the audience with regard to the use of AI. And for those who are walking in the door and they know AI is out there, they know others are using it, it can be helpful, go back to the very beginning, a few words of advice about where to start, places to go look, what to look at, some perhaps programs or packages or websites to start with. What would be your advice to that group?
So this is a field now you can actually teach yourself if you want to. But it's just a bit like do you need a book? No, you can just go on the internet and find stuff. But it's sometimes nice to have a book. Sometimes it's nice to take a course. There are lots of courses that are for free that you can take, but you can't ask questions in those courses. Right. The next step are extension courses, the course that Anna took. There's lots of those, and you can then ask questions of the teacher and you can learn from your students. It is actually possible for you at the current stage where the market is and where the tools, you can actually be more advanced than so-called specialists in your field. Just by pushing the edge yourself, you can actually go ahead and do that. So the first step is just play with stuff, and you'll find pretty quickly ChatGPT will actually tell you, if you actually put the questions, where do I start? It'll probably give the same answer I give. You can talk to my chatbot, a similar answer. Start asking me questions. What do you want to do? Create a syllabus for AI for finance. Come up with a list of questions. Go into Notebook. I think the packages I sort of mentioned are my favorites. Notebook LM, I like that, or just generate quick quizzes and questions for you. But guess what? Your students are going to be just as powerful as you, right? That's the little bit of difference. It used to be, I know what the Sortini ratio is and you don't, so I'm going to impart my knowledge. Now it's going to be a bit more equal and it's going to be more of a discussion.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I do want to ask though, because this is, practically important, give us some advice on exam and test now, right? The student can access AI, right? And what is your practice?
So on examining.
Yeah, and examine,
Yeah.
the exams,
So my
the student, how do you test them?
My practice is, I hand out projects, I hand out papers, there's no real right answer. And what I'm asking them is for originality. So that's one level where AI is going to be a little bit weaker. AI is pretty strong, and it looks original, but really it isn't, but as a human, that's one level today. We can still say, I don't really want a review of what the AI does. I want you to come up with your own opinion. Like this is our question, the regulator question. That'd be a classic question for personal finance students. There's no right answer really for it. And that forces them to think out of the box. The other thing is project work, build stuff, right? We're now to the level you can expect people to build stuff, actually build real applications. In the past, we'd expect them to build spreadsheets, right? Or write essays or PowerPoint slides. We can go one step further. No, you're going to build an application for your field, for a group. You're going to Papua New Guinea, and you're going to build a thing for people who don't have access to computers, but they have access to phones. Come up and again, creativity. I'm trying to get young people to be creative now, and rather than just telling them stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for this great session. And given the importance of this topic, I know we will continue to cover it. I know I will have an interview with you for the newsletter. And also I'd like to ask the participant, to share how they are using AI for teaching personal finance. We hope that this network can provide, some information about that. As you say, we need, in a sense, to, take advantage of this, great tool that we have now available and use it to the best. We would like to take a short break so that, you can maybe stand up if you like, you can answer email and so on. But before we do so, we would like actually you to answer a question. And you can take all of the time now to answer this question, but this is something that we think can be quite helpful, and it has proven to be very helpful here at Stanford. And you can see that the question is, whether if you are teaching personal finance, does the course satisfy the distribution, we call it here requirement, or is it a general education? And if you answer yes, can you tell us in the chat how important this has been for the course, for example, for the number of students that you get in the course, for the mix of students major, and so on. And when we come back from the break, we will say a few words, sharing some of the experiences I know of the participant, and also I'd like to tell you a little bit how this has affected our course here at Stanford. But thank you again for our speakers.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, great.
Welcome back from the break. I'm happy to see that many colleges and universities offer a personal finance course that satisfies the distribution general education requirement. At Stanford, this has been critically important. This is how we are getting so many students, and not just from econ, but from many majors. And I know it has been the experience of other universities as well who have made personal finance satisfy this requirement. I want to mention in particular one of our collaborators, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Now more than 1,500 students are taking personal finance courses there, and they only started 2 years ago. But now it is time to turn to the third session, the power of stories, and enhancing financial education through narratives. We are very happy to have Sharon Epperson here to moderate this session. And speaking of stories, I know, Sharon, that you have one story yourself to share. So please go ahead, and we are so excited to have you.
Thank you so much, Anna. When I think about personal finance, reporting on personal finance, which is what I do, or teaching personal finance, which is what I do sometimes to my 20-year-old and 23-year-old children, I think about the stories that I can share with them that may resonate or may give them an idea of why it's so important to learn about certain financial principles. And one of the things when I think about what my money story is, and the one word that I would use to describe it, it would be to protect. My job is to help people manage, grow, and protect their money. And in my reporting, I listen very carefully to what people that I interviewed, financial advisors and other experts, told me about making sure that you protect your money with having proper insurance, health insurance, disability insurance, making sure you have an emergency fund, making sure you have a budget, and making sure you automate payments that you may be not paying on time if you didn't have it automated. And all of those things came into play for me 9 years ago. In September of 2016, I nearly lost my life to a ruptured brain aneurysm. I was in hospitals for over a month. I was out of work for a year. And if I did not have disability insurance, if I did not have emergency savings, and if I did not have, frankly, a lot of our bills automated, I don't know if my family would still be in their home. So for me, protect is a key word when it comes to my money story. And I think it's important to share these stories with viewers, with students, to get them to understand that this is real world. This is so very important. And what I'm really happy that we're able to do today is to hear from an economics professor who has moved into teaching personal finance as well, Irene Foster from the Georgetown University, and also Chris Temple, a filmmaker who has done a film about personal finance, but from a perspective that I think a lot of young people can relate to, which is looking at influencers and social media as a way that is guiding some and perhaps providing challenges to others. And Chris, I wanted to start with you in terms of talking about money stories and why that you think that's important, because obviously you made this film because you think money stories are important, and you've told some very interesting ones in the film. But what's your personal money story, and how does that influence what you are doing?
If I wanted to describe my money story in one word, I would have to say FOMO. The fear of missing out, where I think this is a money story that affects many, many people. And for me, it really started, even though I was an economics major in college, I knew very little about personal finance. So for me, my money journey really actually began in 2021. I was getting all of these group texts and sponsored YouTube videos telling me that I was missing out on some opportunity to get rich, right? Everything was like telling me that this is the moment. If I don't act now, I'm going to be poor for the rest of my life. And I found that influence of social media and pressure emotionally was really affecting my decision making. So, to be frank, I made a lot of mistakes. I got really sucked into this world of speculative investing, especially on meme stocks, on crypto, on other things like that. And I was chasing those dopamine highs and rushes. So through that experience, I was involved in a lot of different communities on Reddit, Twitter, elsewhere that were also participating like this. And I've been a documentary filmmaker for about 15 years. And I started really thinking, hey, this might be the basis for a really interesting story to actually start filming with regular Americans like myself over the next couple years and understand the psychology of these decisions that they're making in the current very speculative economy. So we began, and I interviewed about 500 different retail investors, experts, folks at CNBC, financial advisors to kind of create the basis of this feature documentary called This Is Not Financial Advice. And in it, it features the stories of 4 regular Americans from all walks of life over a 2-year period as they navigate what I think is a very relatable story for many of us of, how we deal with these pressures of FOMO, defining risk, goal setting, etc.
Well, let's take a look at the trailer for this film.
Woo! Okay, New York Times, the editor said that these were out. That's me. That's crazy. That's crazy. Dogecoin is a joke. His millions are not. I literally took everything out of my bank accounts, sold all my stock.
Crypto trading activity hit a new high. New record.
Maxed out 2 credit cards and took out cash advances and threw it all into Dogecoin.
Recently rallied to be worth more than Kraft Foods, and it has no product.
I just became a millionaire by spending all my money on Dogecoin.
Look at that.
I know people that would put $10,000 in Dogecoin, but they won't put $10,000 in Costco. Like, look at all them cereals I eat. That's gonna be around.
My wife doesn't really get it. Her money's her money, my money's my money. Everything's cool.
We have made a decision to close your credit card account. I'm the brokest millionaire you know. If you guys know how much money I had in my bank account, you'd laugh.
I would sell no later than tomorrow.
No, selling.
We live in a time where people have lost faith in institutions, that the system isn't fair to them.
Like 10% of people hold 70% of the stocks in the stock market.
We don't know about that, We come with this dream, shake a tree and money's gonna fall.
I can understand why somebody says, I'm gonna do it my own way, and there are other people like me, and we're gonna go against the rules.
I'm Kayla, also known as Girls Talk Stocks.
I'm trying to be a voice of reason for people who want to enter this space, and now I feel like it's more volatile than I'd expected.
I just dropped 300,000. Oh my! You lost $5,000, 1,000, well, however much you invested. I lost millions.
And cut. Someone's gonna win, someone's gonna lose. There's no way around it.
I was up 100K first day. Now we're up like 800K.
You're not even trying to make the fiscally responsible decision.
Why didn't you ask for cash? You know you need cash.
Because Dogecoin is the future, Mom.
I was a millionaire for like 5 minutes.
It breaks your brain.
They don't care.
They shot their shot.
There are no rules.
It hit.
Black man owns this building, so I put a black man on the building.
You like it?
Oh.
Nothing's real. Anything is possible. The simulation is glitch.
Nothing is real, anything is possible. That is a very hard lesson to, share with students who are watching everything on TikTok or Instagram and thinking that that is real life. Chris, how important is it for educators to understand what's there on social media, but also to be able to share real stories when teaching personal finance?
I think it's absolutely critical. 25% or more of high schools now require personal finance classes, very low. And, 79% of Gen Z cite that social media is their primary source of financial information. It's 8 and 10. That is a huge number. And I think we have to understand that that's the ecosystem that we're competing with. So I think the key for us as educators is to help anyone really navigate this new financial ecosystem. And it's basically media literacy, right? And I think there's a couple key things we can think about, and what we talk a lot about at events and film showings are helping people look at a YouTube video that they see and digest it, ask hard questions about it, right? So a couple things that you can ask: is this post sponsored, right? Who is creating this post, and what's the incentive to be telling you this information? I think the sponsored post is something to really look at. Looking at, are they making outlandish claims or unrealistic things like 1,000x your return. A lot of YouTube videos that you'll see will be making those kinds of claims. A recent study actually showed that 80% of YouTube content is making false or misleading claims as it relates to personal finance. Is the person qualified to be making and teaching you this kind of information? I think for our students to look and see into the backgrounds of the people that they're following on TikTok or YouTube is that extra step that is critically important. And the other day I even saw, I know the last session was about AI. I even saw a YouTube video that was a reputable creator who had a background in personal finance, yet someone had made a duplicate of their YouTube page and had used AI to replicate their voice and likeness. So it just looked like this person was telling you to buy a crypto coin, right? And that's the reality that these kids are going into, where it's a really hard system to navigate. So I think, the more that we can support them, the better.
Absolutely, Chris. Irene, I want to bring you into this conversation because we're talking about social media, we're talking about finfluencers, and you are a distinguished economics professor, where I don't think in your economics courses, at least, perhaps that is even mentioned. But in personal finance, that's real world, and that's what students are grappling with. How have you been able to bring your personal stories or stories to the classroom for personal finance classes when that's not something that perhaps you've done for the majority of your career as an economics professor?
Yes, thank you so much for asking me that question. It is, I've taught economics for so long and never really talked about my own personal life in any of my classes. But the very second time I taught my personal finance class, I hadn't planned it, but I just ended up blurting out my own personal finance story. And when I saw the reaction from the students, I just thought, oh, I've just discovered something here. So let me share my story. The story that I told students, and it's a true story, is about my own family. And I told them about my mother-in-law, who was born to a very poor Swedish family in Chicago. And when she was 16 years old, she had to go to work to help support the family, and has worked all her life, never had a chance to go to college, just didn't have the money, had to work. And when my father-in-law died, my husband has an older brother, and both of them reached out to their mother to find out, did she need any help? She had never been to college or anything like that. So they wanted to know, did she need help with taxes? Did she need help with the life insurance company, getting Social Security? Did she need help with paying for the funeral, the reception that they needed to have for my father-in-law? And her response to all of that was, oh, no, don't worry about that, honey. Dad and I have taken care of everything. And she had already contacted Social Security. She had already reached out to the insurance agencies. She knew exactly what to do. And they had prepaid their funerals, both of them. And so not only that, I mean, literally, there was no cost to any of the kids for, Dad's funeral or anything, which was really amazing to me, especially when we talk about women not knowing so much about finance. Here's a woman in 2 generations ago who knew so much about it, somebody who hadn't even gone to college. The other story that I tell is that of my dad. My dad is one of the smartest people I know. I have admired my dad all my life. I love the way he thinks. I model my teaching after the way he did his teaching. My dad is a PhD in finance from Harvard. After he got his degree, we went back to India, and my dad has been a consultant for the government of India, the government of Nigeria, the government of Malaysia, all through the Ford Foundation. He has written multiple books on corporate financial management. He has been on the boards of a lot of large Indian public sector and private sector companies. So a person to be really admired, and we just thought the world of my dad. When my husband and I got married, 3 months after we were married, my dad came to the US and sat down with us and said he needed $25,000. We had just started our careers. We did not have $25,000 lying around, but Daddy needed it. So we borrowed the money and did what we could for my dad.
Yes.
Not only
Yes.
did we never see that $25,000 back, but we also did not see return to us any of the tens of thousands of dollars that came after that. It got to a point where I then learned that my brothers were also giving my dad money. He was also asking them. And then it became a real point of contention between us. I mean, my brothers and I stopped talking to each other for a while because we were all arguing about who had given daddy more money. And then we came to a point after several years of this was going on for a while. And, there's so much built in. There's emotion, there's culture. In Indian culture, you don't talk back to your parents. You don't ask, your revered father any questions about finance. And of course, he's the expert.
Right.
And of course, if daddy says he's going to return the money, it's going to be returned. So you don't do these things, but we came to a point where my brothers and I, both of them are younger to me, but they're amazing people. We just finally decided this is enough. And we had a talk, and the three of us flew to India. And we very nicely, we didn't yell at my dad or any of that. We just sat with him and said, okay, tell us everything.
Yeah.
And then at that point, he told us everything. And then we stepped in, and between the three of us, we took care of everything.
What do you think resonated with your students the most about these two stories? What was the
I asked
feedback
them.
that you received?
In fact, I asked them that. I said, okay, why do you think I told you this very, very personal story? And immediately one of the students said, the very first day of class, he said, because you wanted to tell us that just knowing about personal finance is not enough. I mean, what did my dad not know? Did he not know how to do a budget? Did he not know about compound interest? I mean, what did he not know? So just knowing the stuff is not enough. There's some behavior involved. There's some emotion involved. In economics classes, we always talk about rationality in models, but we all know that when it comes to money, we're not always rational. So it's really important to talk about behavior.
Very important to talk about behavior. And so that brings me to a question for all of you and that are participating in this conference. And I'm wondering if you share a personal story about money, about your relationship with money or a family member's relationship with money, but some personal money story in your classes, yes or no? If you've shared a personal money story with your students in class, we're interested in finding out from you what you have to say about that, yes or no. And also finding out, in the chat, why you think it is or is not appropriate to do so in the classroom. So anxious to hear your thoughts on that. Also, Irene, I wanted to ask you, you were mentioning about, talking about models and rationality and all of that. Why do you think that a personal finance course could, in fact, be the perfect gateway to more students taking economics courses?
Yeah, thank you for asking me that question. The economics is a really hard subject because we teach some very abstract concepts. Think about the first course you take, for example, you take microeconomics, and people are talking about opportunity cost. They're talking about something called marginal analysis, and that economists think on the margin, and that you've got to learn to think like that. But then all of the examples that we use are very abstract and not so related to the real world. On the other hand, if I teach opportunity cost in a personal finance class, it immediately has meaning. We are saying, are you going to go and buy that cup of coffee at Starbucks, or are you going to save up all of those dollars and put them into, a mutual fund or an ETF or something like that? Well, they get it immediately. They understand that concept immediately. The idea of marginal is so hard to teach in microeconomics, and people end the semester still not having actually figured it out intuitively what it means. But if I talk about marginal tax rates and how we pay taxes, well, guess what? They get it immediately. And then there are lots of concepts that they just don't know. So, for example, I mean, we are assuming when we talk about shopping behavior and pricing and stuff like that, freshmen may never have shopped. Maybe their parents are doing all the shopping. I mean, they don't know what anything costs because they're using their parents' credit card. And so suddenly you're talking about all of this in a personal finance class, which kind of sets them up then perfectly for that microeconomics class. Same for macroeconomics. We are assuming they know a lot of stuff about the stock market, the bond market, what an interest rate is. I can't tell you, Sharon, the number of times I've had a student come to my office and say, Professor Foster, I'm so sorry to ask you this, but can you explain to me exactly what an interest rate is?
Yeah.
And we're trying to teach them macroeconomics and what the Fed is doing with an interest rate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What has the feedback been, Chris, from, you've shown this film in a number of schools around the country. What are there economics professors or economics classes that are watching this as well? And what do you hope that your film and your work is helping to convey about economic principles?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've done events all around the country at universities, and we actually, if any teachers here, we are this coming year we're offering, thanks to a generous sponsorship from FINRA, we're going to do 20 university events where we show the film, we do workshops, we talk about this stuff, get into the nitty gritty, and come onto campus to engage with your students. And again, thanks to FINRA, they're sponsoring all the costs of those. So I put a link in the Q&A if anyone's interested to reach out and do that. But yeah, I mean, I think, again, I was an economics major and I didn't know any of this stuff. Again, another thing when you talk about personal money story, it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I realized I needed to invest the money I was putting in my Roth IRA. I was just putting money in it. I didn't know that I then needed to allocate
just
that.
Today saying most people do that. A lot of people do that.
But like, how are we not, how could I have gone through at a top prestigious university in economics and not have known that? And once I started saying it, yes, so many others were also, in that place. So, I think so much of, I think you're spot on, Irene, with what you were saying, that our goal, and especially with this film, is to be the spark for someone's money journey. It's a lifelong process, right? Like we're not going to teach you in an hour or a single course to define all your goals around money, to have all of this, but we can get you interested and have I think most importantly, have the confidence to no longer fear it.
Yes.
Because I think so many people look at money and they look at these conversations and it's purposefully using exclusionary terms. It's been designed to be a system that tells young people especially, or marginalized populations, that they can't be a part of this, that they don't know enough. And I think that's where it's like, right now, I think is a really, really interesting moment where we have this democratization of access and information, right? Like anybody now can invest on their phone for free in fractionalized shares into ETFs. That is incredible, right? But the other side of that then is, okay, on your phone in an instant, you can invest your life savings in something not knowing what you're doing. So it's just that balancing act here of helping people learn and gain exposure into it. But when I look at economics principles that I hope that this film and personal finance can teach, I think economic inequality is the one that I hope the most, where I'll just tell a brief story about someone in the film who, the main character in the film, he maxes out his credit cards, he takes out cash advances, and he puts it all into Dogecoin, which is a speculative cryptocurrency based on a dog, right? It's a joke. There is no product behind it or anything, but it has momentum and it has people who are interested in this joke. It's easy to judge this guy immediately for his decision, but the more time I spent with him over the years, I learned that, the main character, Pro, he was undocumented. So he felt like he really didn't have many opportunities to access traditional markets or other things. His mom worked as a house cleaner. He was coming from a very low income family. And oftentimes the lack of savings and stability that he had was actually what was contributing to the higher risk that he was willing to take. And we see this in a perfect example in the lottery system here in the US. And some of you might know this, but those who are buying lottery tickets are those who have the least. Because if we don't provide in this country, a ladder to climb to the middle class, then people are going to look for trampolines. And I think you can't immediately judge someone for looking for that when they're starting. What I think most recently is 50% of Americans don't have $500 in savings.
Right.
That's the starting point. Those are the people we need to reach and welcome them into markets to start creating generational wealth.
Absolutely. I do want to mention the results of the poll. which show that three out of four people who are watching and participating in this conference do share their money story. So that's good. We're not telling you something that you're not already doing. You're doing it. 74% of you are sharing your story. Only 26% said no, you are not. What I think is interesting, Irene, in sharing these stories and in talking about personal stories of others as well, is something that Chris has mentioned, that economic inequality and making sure when you're in a very diverse classroom that you're not talking about these issues with any judgment or any shame, or making sure that people do not feel like there's a stigma because they didn't know this, or their parents didn't teach them about money in any way, or they never had an opportunity to, have access to a Roth IRA because that was not even a term that was spoken in their household. How do you deal with that in the classroom, Irene, as you're trying to talk, as you're teaching a variety of students from various socioeconomic backgrounds about managing money?
Yeah, it's a very tough thing, and it's something that I've really had to think about. I mean, even when I think about something like playing a stock market game or something like that, I have to be very careful about what is the initial amount of money we're saying that they have to spend. I mean, if you put in like, oh, you have $100,000 to spend, that is just fantasy for many students in my classroom. So I'm very careful about those sorts of things. I want to, Chris said, make this accessible to everybody, show them how it's accessible to everybody. So I tell them, you can open a mutual fund. Did you know for just $25 a month, you could open a mutual fund and you can put your money in there? And many of them are just shocked to find that out. I think that is the kind of thing that's really important. I also wanted to make the classroom a safe space. I wanted to create some community in the classroom. And so part of the storytelling does that. And then I asked them, after I asked them, why do you think I told the story? I asked them a second question. And my second question is, how do you think I feel about my dad today? And then, and they give me some different answers. And I always say, I love my dad. I am proud he's my dad. He is still the smartest person I know. And I also think he's human and he made a mistake. And there was some emotion involved and some, who knows what else, blind spot. But this is us, all of us. Yeah. And, just like that, we have to forgive other people and we have to forgive ourselves. This is a lifelong journey. I think John said that. It is a lifelong journey. We cannot teach them all of this in one class. And all of us are going to make mistakes, financial mistakes. But what we know is we need to get up, dust ourselves off, and keep moving.
Absolutely.
And that's what they have to learn.
Chris, I'm wondering what some of the people that were in the film, like the main character, what their reaction was, if other people, or I should say, was there a negative at all or judgmental reaction from some of the audiences where you showed this film toward any of the characters? And then how do you think they felt about that? Do they know that? Do they, would they, that stigma is just so, is something that is just weighs on so many people.
Absolutely. One of our main goals of the film was that it could not be judgmental. And it's why we actually approached it without having a ton of expert interviews, for example, throughout the film. I think it needed to rely on watching and interpreting it as an audience member yourself. Just come along on this journey. Watch 4 people who have very different relationships with money, and we'll help guide you through that journey. But we're not going to, no point do we call pro stupid in the film, or things like that, right? And I think he really respected that. He's been a big supporter of the film, come to a lot of events and been a part of it. All 4 of them have, they were the first people to see the film before we released it online. That was another thing that was important to us, just to make sure that they felt like we were accurately capturing their story. One thing that really surprised me in the reactions was actually how powerful it can be for someone to have a mirror and look at their own decisions and how they're dealing with money. So one example, there's a father in the film, who's a father of 3, who makes some really big financial risks with his family's money. He sells his family home and he puts a lot of it into a speculative cryptocurrency, takes a really big risk with his family's money. And he's constantly on his phone trading stocks and crypto 24/7, right? And he has this 4-year-old. And I loved sitting in the room filming the 2 of them because it was these little moments where he's on his phone, manically, like flipping stocks and celebrating, and he's on another computer over here doing this. And his 4-year-old's just sitting next to him with a car, right? And he's like, "Hey, Dad, do you want to play?" And his kids don't care at all what he's doing to make money for them, or this narrative he was writing himself about the risks he needed to take for his family. Like, he was justifying it, but really all his kid wanted was to spend time with his dad, right? And I think when we showed it in the theater and he got to watch that live and see those moments from that different perspective, he told me it really changed how he was seeing some of his inclinations towards gambling. And he was, he decided he could not engage with crypto gambling anymore, and decided to step back from it. And this is someone who, was really engaged in that world. And so, I do think the story or that mirror can sometimes be really helpful to see how others are perceiving your behavior. And I think for me, watching the film too, and making the film, it showed me that I had some of my behaviors with money were really, really toxic. They were based so much in emotion. They were having a drain on my relationship with my partner. I wasn't sleeping well, but it's hard to see it all until someone puts up a mirror.
The mirror concept is key, I think, in helping to teach this. I want to get your perspective on that, Irene, in one moment. But I also want to get the view of the participants here about teaching about crypto, because, that's all this, the movie is largely about that. And that is what a lot of young people are very interested, not just young people, a lot of people are very interested in at this moment in terms of investing in crypto or owning crypto. So do you teach it? Do you teach about crypto and alternative assets and alternative investments in your class? Yes or no? Let us know, and we'll come back to that. Also, please include your questions about anything that we've talked about or anything you want to know about from these panelists in the chat, in the Q&A section, and we'll make sure to definitely answer those questions toward the end of this session. So please submit your questions as well. Irene, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that mirror idea that Chris mentioned, because I know that you have some specific exercises, actually assignments that you give to your students that force them to have to kind of be a mirror about their own financial life or what's happening in their family. Can you tell us a little bit about what exactly are some of the assignments that you think have resonated the most with students that force them to look in the mirror?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And I was going to say that after Chris anyway, that some of the mirroring is extremely helpful.
Yeah.
One of the exercises, the first exercise I give them is Anna's Big Three, or sometimes the Big Five, just to see where they are. And our students are pretty knowledgeable. They know about stuff. But again, the question of doing and who are you and what are your financial behaviors, that's a completely different thing. So then we give them, and I learned this from Anna, I think, because I remember we built a syllabus together. I asked them about their own risk profile. So there is a really good questionnaire. So I have them fill that out as a first assignment. And then I report back on the results. So where does everybody land? And then where everybody lands is somewhat in the middle. Everybody's kind of cautious, not too risk loving. There are a couple of people in class. There was a girl and a guy way out there, big risk lovers. There was a girl and, a couple of girls and a guy at the very bottom of, who are very risk averse, but other than that, most people, it was very interesting for people to see where they fell and then where the rest of the class fell. And after the semester was over, a girl told me that it was extremely helpful for her to know that about herself, because then she could make the kinds of choices that matched that or mitigated who she was, so she said it was extremely helpful. The other thing that I do is I give them a budgeting exercise. Actually, it's a cash flow tracker. So I say, okay, for the entire month of February, what we're going to do, we give them a spreadsheet. You're just going to track cash flow. What is the money that you have coming in? It might be coming in from parents or from you working. If it comes in, every couple of weeks, put it in every couple of weeks, but you're going to do this for the month. And then try to, if you can remember as much as you can, to put in all your expenditures for the day. Like if you went out for a coffee, if you went out for dinner with a friend, just put in those expenditures, bought gum at CVS, just put it in there. And then at the end of the month, I'll say, we remind them a few times over the course of the month. And at the end of the month, everybody has to submit that spreadsheet. And then at that point, some of them will say, oh my God, Professor Foster, I'm really terrible at doing this kind of stuff. I couldn't track it. So then I have them do a reflection. And then say the people, what did you learn for the people who really tracked everything? So there's some people who can really track stuff and they love it and they've tracked everything. And then so I'll say, what did you learn about your behavior? And then there are people who, forgot this or that, but mostly we can see the picture, their financial picture. And then there are people who just did not do it. And so we asked them why they didn't do it. Is it because, they just forgot or were too lazy? Or is it that they don't want to think about money? What is it? And that is a really interesting reflection. And
Absolutely.
then I bring it back to the class and I say, this is what we learned about you guys. And I don't name names or anything like that, but it is so educational for the students. I mean, if they're overspending, what do they overspend on? Subscriptions and eating out. And the eating out is because of peer pressure.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh my God, I didn't realize I was spending so much on subscriptions. I need to stop that. But that mirroring and also, that self-reflection, knowing who you are and how you spend, and also seeing how other people are and what they're doing. And then the next month, I have them do the same exercise again, but this time, no excuses. Even the guys who didn't track last time get full points. But if you know you're not a tracker and you're scared of money, guess what? We teach you how to use Rocket Money.
Yeah.
And Rocket Money will do the tracking for you.
Exactly.
And at the end of the second month, they have to turn in a spreadsheet on how much they spent and how much they took in.
Excellent. I want to get the answer to the poll about crypto, because I think the majority of people are saying that they do not teach it. Let's say 62% do not teach crypto. And I'm wondering, Chris, this kind of goes to the point of, I think some things are tough to teach. There's so much, there's uncertainty, there's risk involved. When you're talking about a tough topic, that is part of the personal finance ecosystem. Like, how do you teach it if you don't really get it yourself? Or you don't believe in it yourself?
Yeah, this is a hard one. And look, I'm not a big believer in crypto, yet I feel like there's a conversation here that is valuable. And it's because of a couple of things. One, kids are learning about crypto, whether we like it or not. You look at it, it's multi-trillion-dollar market cap.
They're hearing about it. Are they learning it, or are they hearing about it on a
true.
course that isn't really teaching them the true ins and outs of it?
That is a very good delineation. They are hearing about it, and it's probably on group threads or YouTube videos like I was, like I was in 2021. And it's getting more integrated into our financial system. It's literally presidential now. Don't get me started on the start of a meme coin by our own president. That's will go down as one of the biggest financial scams in history, I think. But when you look now at how risky this asset is, I think it's really it's our responsibility to teach at least a little bit. And a couple of things that I would say are, why it's so risky is it's hyper accessible. 2 out of 10 Americans are trading it. It is hyper easy to make. 40,000 new meme coins are made every single day, right? Like the volume of participation is all over the place. It's unregulated because it's not a security. So you're getting even more potential risk for danger for kids than even buying stocks or anything like that. And then you add the security vulnerabilities on top of it. This past year alone, there were $5.6 billion stolen in crypto from North Korea. So just the scope and scale
all of that,
it's like we can ignore it, but it is here and it's knocking on our door and it's causing damage. And so I actually liken it to not talking to kids about alcohol. Right? You're like, okay, we don't want you to drink, so let's just pretend that alcohol doesn't exist. And you're like, well, actually, I think we need to help you understand that in moderation, this could actually work. If you're going to make a speculative asset investment, keep it under 5% of your investable assets, right? Like even that alone, it's like having one drink, don't binge drink. I think that comparison to me works for crypto as does with any speculative asset. And, I don't recommend actually teaching a full class about the ins and outs of blockchain and cryptocurrency. I think it's just a great example to teach off of that is speculative, right?
Yes,
and so allowing that
very good point.
be the one that can come in and be talked about and people can feel safe to ask questions about without needing to kind of just turn to the internet for answers.
Yeah, participants are applauding you, Chris, for that. I don't know which part of it, but but
Oh,
you're
well, thank
definitely
you.
getting positive feedback on that one. Irene, do you teach about crypto in your class? And
Yeah, I do. And I think it's really important for us to include it as part of what we're teaching, as part of the curriculum. And like Chris said, we don't need to be teaching them about the ins and outs of Bitcoin and how it works and all of that, or, where you can go buy it, or, what are all the types that are out there. I think what we need to do is talk about it as part of an entire financial strategy.
Yeah.
Where does it fit? And I think we would treat it the same way as we would gambling or buying lottery tickets or any of that. So the perspective is what we can give our students. And so I tell them, this is not what we would think of as investing. We would think maybe call it trading or something like that. Think about it as money you're willing to burn. So, you don't know. It is highly risky. You could make money, you could lose a lot of money. And so you need to think of it as part of your entire investment strategy. This is the whole diversification thing. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, so definitely do not put all your money into crypto. It can be part of your strategy, but it cannot be the entire strategy.
Excellent.
And again, doing it from a non-judgmental place. I think coming at it and
It's
recognizing
very important.
that, hey, it feels good when the number goes up on your screen and it pulses green and it hits you with dopamine. It's the same reason why all of us get pulled into social media or other things is this dopamine's a very, very powerful drug. And I think we have to recognize that for students.
I want to get to some of the questions because many of you have questions. I want to make sure that I get to some of them now. But one of the things that kind of relates to what we're just talking about, one of the participants is asking, what do you hope students and viewers take away about the risks and rewards of online investing? You may have addressed that a little bit already, but Irene, what do you think?
Online investing, that's what the kids are all doing. And there's some very good if you look at something like Investopedia or something like that, they have some very good guidance on what kinds of online investing channels are really good, which ones are very low cost, etc. And for students who are just starting out, who may just have very small amounts of money, it's very good guidance from there. So online investing, but you'd have to know, who you're using to do the online investing or who you're doing it through. And there is, even if we are all not so knowledgeable about it, there is a lot of information online on the best things for somebody who's just starting out or who's a student and what they should be doing.
Excellent. Chris, I know you said you put in the chat information about your film and about how people can find out if they want to work with FINRA and having it shown at their schools. But is there a link to be able to see the entire film? That is a question that's asked. And if so, is that something that you're willing to put into the chat, or do they need to sign up with FINRA to have it shown at their schools first?
No, 100%. This film was made for people to see it. It's available for free to any teacher, student, anybody who wants to see this thing. It's available streaming online on all sorts of different platforms across Amazon, Documentary Plus, Tubi, anywhere to just see the full film. And then if you want to do more of a workshop and conversation and things like that, please just reach out to us. I put an email for our head of impact at Optimist, our nonprofit. Her name is Samantha. In the Q&A here, reach out, send us a note, and say, hey, we'd love to explore something at my university, and we'll cover all the costs of travel and putting on the events and bringing in food for the event. And it's such an amazing opportunity that FINRA is providing us. We already have done about 25 events over the past year and are doing another 20 or so this year because they really believe in the importance of investor education, which has been great.
That's
and if you are in the DC area, we are showing it at GW on October 29th. We're going to be showing the film. And so anyone in the DC area is welcome to come.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And maybe Loretta can put the link, the YouTube or whatever version of it in the chat for folks as well. But again, this is not financial advice. Is a film that you can find on all of these platforms. You Google it and you'll find it there. Another question that's from a participant: how might storytelling intersect with other innovations such as AI or gamification in the future of financial education? Irene, what do you think?
We are just beginning to look at AI in the classroom and how to use it effectively. I've just started doing that in my economics classes, actually. I haven't quite started with my personal finance class yet. But yeah, I'm excited to see. The gamification is nice, but I think somehow, again, you don't want it to give that fantasy feeling to what you're doing. You do want it to be real world. The storytelling coming from human beings is so much more powerful. And what I started doing was asking my students to come up with case studies to talk about in the classroom. And several of them, I said, but it has to be real. It has to be somebody that you know, and they have to be willing to be videotaped and have the video be presented in class. And you are interviewing that person. It could be your grandparents, your mother, your father. I cannot tell you how many parents have volunteered. Parents who went broke because somebody cheated them, parents who got into a divorce and now, lost all their money in the divorce, and who want to talk about that situation and talk to students about how not to get into such situations and how to avoid them. That is so much more powerful than, I don't know, maybe a game.
Yeah, a game. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, Irene. I think that's a really smart idea. I think it just makes it tying in the parents in any way or the family conversation is so good. We use that a lot with films where it's if we show a film in the classroom, we also ask the teacher to share it with the parent community, or we try to do like an event during the day and then at night we have one for parents, because that's where the ongoing conversation can continue to happen outside the classroom too.
Yeah. Margaret Miller has a question that is inspired by Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow framework. How to most effectively connect storytelling and entertainment media, which are immediate and engaging, thinking fast, with skills to evaluate and plan one's finances, which are thinking slow. So how do you connect storytelling, I guess, to those concepts?
What do you think, Irene?
The thinking slow idea is really important in econ. When we solve problems and things, I mean, we have to stop students and we say, think about the formula, think about the numbers, plug them in. It's systems thinking. And we want them to think that way, systems thinking for personal finance as well. That's why the concepts like opportunity cost and thinking on the margin are really important in personal finance as well. But in personal finance, it is real life. These are not just makeup, John and Tim need to go on a trip and, which option are they going to choose? This is your real life and you are making decisions about it. And so I think it's very effective. The slow thinking is what we always ask them to. So we show them models for slow thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I would love if you could share, because I think as the mother of a recent college graduate and a college junior, your exercise about dining dollars, I don't know if that's just GW and Columbia that have them, but I assume most schools have them, and how that real world scenario helps your students with budgeting. Again, thinking slow, but they're thinking fast, because these things are gone in a minute, speaking from experience as the mother who had to add dollars. So what are some of describe that assignment or that exercise and others that are truly real world for every student. They don't have to come from a family that's given them $100,000 to invest in a stock market game.
Yes, exactly. So the part of the goal of the course was to get students talking about money and to normalize discussions about money and not have it be judgmental, as I think, Chris, you mentioned that. So one thing they can do is, and they have to go out and teach somebody else. Whatever they're learning in the classroom, this is not knowledge you keep for yourself, but you go talk to other people. You could talk to your roommate, you could talk to your parents, talk to your sibling. But we do know that freshmen coming into GW are for the first time managing money a lot of the time. Yep. And so many of them have never managed money before, don't know how to do it. One problem that we see all the time is that we have a meal plan called Dining Dollars, and they buy into it, but by mid-semester, they have run through all of their money. And then they don't know what to do for the rest of the semester. So in the middle of the semester, freshman fall, they're emailing their parents and saying, Mom and Dad, I need cash. Or I shouldn't say emailing, texting their parents saying, I need cash, fill it up quickly. And of course, many parents cannot send additional money. So then the question becomes, where are they going to get their food? And so this is a huge issue at GW. And so I asked students, so I said, if you could educate our freshmen on anything, what sorts of things would you educate them on? So number one topic that came out was dining dollars, how to budget your dining dollars so that it lasts for the whole semester. And if you run out of dining dollars all of a sudden, then how can you supplement your dining dollars? What are the things you can do on campus that to help you supplement? The athletes did one for the athletic department where they said in some sports they are not getting enough, they're not paid enough to actually meet all their nutritional needs. So many of the athletes did videos for the freshman athletes on how to meet their caloric needs given their constrained budgets. We had foreign students who developed videos for our Office of International Students because they said foreign students come to GW and then they just don't know where to open a bank account, how money is going to be transferred from wherever they're coming from, France or Africa, some country in Africa. How is it going to come in without them being charged a lot? And nobody here is giving them any information on all of that. So they developed a video just for foreign students coming into the US for the first time. What credit card should they get? Where should they open a bank account? How should they transfer money across countries? So this is all from students, generated by students, ideas from students. It was amazing.
That's amazing. And I think Kristen Burnell is probably so excited right now because she literally just put in a question to you about how do you make sure that you're teaching personal finance so that American students it's resonating with them, but foreign students as well. And I think you gave a very good example for that. Chris, I'm interested in hearing from you for some final thoughts on just what strategies or approaches educators have used after seeing your film, after their students see your film, to make sure that it really resonates and that they're getting some key personal finance principles across to them, particularly ones that are tough or boring to kind of talk about, like, crypto money is taxed.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We have some discussion guide materials and otherwise on our website and the links that I put there. And I think a lot of the exercises, Irene, that you were talking about make so much sense. Where to me, again, I'm a filmmaker at its core. I'm not in the classroom as an educator every day. We do these events and screenings and other things. But I think for me, I'm always just trying to provide that spark of intrigue to get people to be willing to go on this journey. And then you guys are the experts who take it from there and get to really run with the exercises and other things. But at events, what I've seen to be really great, everything that you were saying, Irene, also a lot of schools that do programs where their universities students can teach local high school or middle schoolers and have that like give back element. That's been something that's been really inspiring to me, and a lot more universities are doing, because nothing helps you learn more than teaching it, right? And if you can try to simplify this for an eighth grader to understand risk, that can be a really beautiful thing. One student at an event last year was talking to me about risk, and I'll share the anecdote where they were saying that, to equate the decision of your risk tolerance to when you're on a roller coaster, right? And you're like, your risk tolerance is not when you're kind of like beforehand, you're excited and you're thinking about going on the roller coaster. It's not the part where you're kind of a little giddy and you're being cranked up to the top. Your risk tolerance is that moment where you plummet off that first full drop and everything is going terribly and who knows what's happened. That's your risk tolerance moment. And to try to help students understand, those are the hard parts in their investing journey in their market that they may be running into, whether it's the 2008 financial crisis or the pandemic or these things, and to start to imagine being in those kinds of environments to think of risk tolerance. So again, I just love the creative ideas that students and teachers are coming up with all over, and however film and video can be helpful in aiding that. Let us know. We've got the full film. We've also broken it into modules. So there's like 10-minute video clips that you can use in your classroom that illustrate very specific points, like one on risk, one on diversification, one on the attention economy and how you navigate financial influencers. So we're just trying different ways to be useful, but please teach us how we can be the best supporters of anyone in the classroom. We're set up as a nonprofit at Optimist, and we just want to make videos that are useful for you.
Yeah.
Can I share one story? Do I have time to share one story?
Well, we're almost going on the time that we have to close, but one short story, 30 seconds.
One short story. Community service is the key. I had a student in class who said that her mother would not allow her to get a credit card and that she had gone behind her mother's back and gotten 2 credit cards. And then the whole discussion was about Hispanic families and how they don't like their kids to have credit cards. And she went on to work with the Latino Student Fund and giving presentations to young parents about how important it is for students to start learning how to use a credit card, from high school and into the first years of college. So community service is a big deal. That's also where they learn to talk about money.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. Irene and Chris, I want to thank you so very much for your insights and for underscoring what I believe in and has been my whole career, which is storytelling. And I think it's critical for teaching personal finance. I do want to share that CNBC also has a free resource that I think would be very helpful for educators, and that is the Money 101 and Dinero 101 newsletter series. It's available in English and in Spanish. It's an 8-part series that looks at budgeting, saving, buying your first home, a number of different topics, 8 different topics, including estate planning and having insurance and those things as well. But just as an opportunity to spark the conversation in your classrooms, I think it would be wonderful for students to subscribe to this newsletter, and hopefully they read their emails. I know they get too many, they don't read a lot of their emails, but hopefully they will. Or if you subscribe, at least it gives perhaps a prompt for you for that particular day to share that with your students. But this has been a wonderful conversation, Chris and Irene. I thank you so much. Anna, thank you very much for inviting us to talk about this, and I'll turn it over to you.
I want to say there is an important role for media to improve the knowledge, of the student, but of everybody. And Sharon, you have been such a great leader in that. We are so happy that also you could join today. I also wanted to share that I saw the presentation of Irene at a conference about using storytelling in our course, and that convinced me as well to use storytelling in my own course. It has been very effective because I think with story you can bring home very easily a complex concept, and it has been a wonderful tool to use. And I don't think I would have done it without your clear presentation and your very convincing presentation. And we did have Chris come and present the movie here at Stanford. It was probably one of the best lectures we could have on cryptos.
Thank you.
Chris came, he engaged with our student, and again, this is a topic that is so dear to students that I think if I had just given my own lecture on it, I think it would not have brought home the points that were raised today about, careful about what you do, and here are some of the consequences potentially of your financial decisions. So these are really powerful tools, I would say. Do use stories and, find ways also to make the topic very engaging. So Chris, we very much love to see, you continue to help us in this type of topics, and we'll definitely use a lot more videos and story in our own teaching as well. Let me just say, I have learned so much today, and I want to thank all of the speakers, the moderators, and the participants as well. I know we have so many still listening to us now. So I hope we have shared some useful information and important questions. The conference might have come to a close, but the conversation hasn't. So let's keep talking. Please reach out with news about what you are doing and other information you think will help the network. We have a newsletter for sharing details and data that can be helpful for teaching personal finance. If you are not teaching personal finance, we are happy to be a resource for how to start a course or initiative on your campus. And actually the community here will probably also be able to provide many examples or many resources that can be helpful. We have recorded this event and we will post it on our website. So feel free to share it with other academics or colleagues that could benefit from today's conference. And if you know of academics who might be interested in becoming part of this network, please send us their name and contact information. We are building the momentum, and I look forward to keeping in touch and working together to make personal finance education available to as many students as possible. So, repeating the word of Francine Lefrak, they can build confidence, independence, and financial freedom. Thank you again. We are going to send you, if you can stay 1 more minute, a survey, a short survey will show up on your screen. We very much would like to get your feedback on today's event. And also we would like to learn which topics we can, for example, cover in future events, and also how the network can really help to continue improve our learning about teaching personal finance. Thank you again for every participant, and thank you again for those who has followed us on YouTube, and thanks again to our great speakers and moderator.